definitely a very special event for us to be a part of. As well, we had two naming ceremonies. So the first one was our super focus,
Yes.
meeting many children. Seeing none, can I get the approval of minutes? Craig, those in favor? And that's carried. And there's no business arising from the minutes, so we'll move right into business operations associate superintendent report. Christine.
Okie dokie, here we go. All right, well, I'm not going to spend too much time on facility services because we're going to get a video presentation on the capital plan later in the agenda. But we're really excited. We do have a design build contract now for Gary Station Elementary School. And so congratulations to Ward Brothers Construction and architects FWBA, who we have worked with on a number of projects, and we're really excited to be working with them on Gary Station. So meetings have already started, and we expect to have to be in the ground this summer. Possibly we'll be looking at a shovel ceremony in June. So I have details. Really excited about that. I won't talk about Galvin because we'll talk about that in our video presentations later. Finance, it is budget time, and we are well into budget. We received our budget engagement tool results that went out. We had 419 survey responses. We're really excited by that. The results are on our community engagement website. But what was definitely demonstrated through the exercise that it is difficult to slice the pie. There's so many needs and everything is a priority. And so it was an interesting to see the results. But we did get a lot of great comments. Highlights of those comments were included the need for more supports for students with diverse learning needs, paying attention to class size, intervention strategies are necessary for our students, particularly when it comes to addressing early education, kindergarten, numeracy. Supporting well-being was also in there, and of course other items such as technology and materials to support learning, STEM strategies, and promoting critical thinking. So trustees will receive the full details of every comment. Given that actually live play going on and a lot of attention to detail. And so it was very exciting. But that is just a small sample of some of the projects. Transportation, I have put this in my document to just provide clarity that under the budget announcement by the province of Alberta, they provided a change to the distance requirements, transporting kindergarten to grade 6 at 1 kilometer and grades 7 to 12 at 2 kilometers, a change from the eligibility, which was 2.4 kilometers. This does not have to be in effect to September 2024. Discussions with our provider, Southland Transportation, they will be needing to buy a lot of buses, hire and train many drivers, as well as finding bus storage and possibly additional mechanics and that sort of thing to support this kind of an operation. We've done preliminary numbers, and the number of eligible students could potentially be doubling. And so from our preliminary numbers, so we want to make sure that we get it right and take our time to plan, and because we'll have to recut all the routes for September 2024. So to be clear, there'll be no changes for 23-24 school year. It's going to operate the same. We have put this on our website as well as it's here. We're planning to do some registrations for the next school year. We're implementing a registration process, and at that time we'll also re-emphasize the fact that the changes will not be in effect for Lethbridge School Division until 2024. And that's, I'm not going to talk about IC Showcase because I'll leave that to Jenny. We already had your report. Okay, well then I'm going to talk about it then, because I'm pretty excited. Because consent agenda. Well, we had the ICE Showcase a couple weeks ago, and wow, was it great. We had over 100 people attend, and we had the students and staff brought some amazing displays. And if you haven't seen Channel 17's news report on the event, you should. They did a great job as well. A wonderful event, and I think we can make it even bigger and better next year.
I noticed that the email, the committee, the whole or budget is not being on the point.
No, we had a confusion. So we are meeting on the 4th for the committee level.
At 3 o'clock.
At 3 o'clock.
No,
Sorry. 1:30.
You'll see a corrected.
Sorry, 1:30.
Meeting invite to you for Tuesday at 1:30.
Okay.
Sorry, Craig.
And it will be called a committee of the whole budget session as well.
Okay.
I've given it there maybe more. Jenny?
I just had a couple of questions. What the Lego challenge, is there somewhere, it says for more information on the project, is there somewhere we can see?
We posted those yet?
No, there's more announcements tomorrow,
Oh,
so it won't be till probably Thursday.
and then did we, what did we do?
Given the ribbons, so a good example of that ribbon is there. There is some prizes, I think, for the top 2 or 3.
Okay, just out of curiosity. And then I did have another question. The new school, are the plans finalized for that? Is there somewhere people can look at this?
So that's what they're doing right now. So they've got preliminary designs that were enough to get the school bid out for the contract award. But now they're finalizing these things, and so we don't have finalized schematics yet. That we still have the renderings are on the community engagement website of what was preliminary done under the design architects that Alberta Infrastructure had hired. There might be some tweaking as we move along with FWA and Warren Brothers, but those renderings are on the community engagement website under the Gary Station. Okay. And as I get more information and updates, I will update.
Go ahead, Jenny, and then Chris.
Oh, I can. Okay. I actually had a further question to that one, but who is involved in that design at this point for that school?
So Daniel Payton sits at the table, our Director of Facility Services, who's an architect. We'll have,
We met him for the big park, right?
yes, yes. So, and he's an architect, so completely trust. And he's built a number of schools and been on a number of our school projects. So he'll be at the table with Ward Brothers and FWDA and all, they have a whole pile of consultants that come. I will attend as many meetings as I can. Infrastructure review wants one rep, but I will attend as many as I will be there as well.
Thank you, I was just trying to understand the process, thank you. And then my other question was for the transportation piece. This is clear and makes sense. What questions I don't feel like I have accurate or clear answers for people that are asking me is for, even when after it's implemented, because the government has implemented it up to just to grade 6, for families who have kids going to grade 6 and grade 8, is only one student from that household going to be eligible? What is our, how are we answering this question?
Yeah, so we received clarification from Alberta Education and only up to grade 6. So it doesn't matter if you have a 7 and 8 in the house, they will not be eligible for transportation.
Okay, and then with that transportation piece as well, without being able to make changes for this fall, if there are empty spots on buses currently passing somebody who is now eligible, will that not change still until 2024?
So right now, our process is, we have people who are not eligible, and maybe we have someone who's at 2.38 or 2.37 who requests to get on a school bus. If we have room on a school bus, we take an application process to say, okay, if there's room on the bus, you can ride for this school year only, but if somebody comes along partway through the year and we need the space, then we have to be asked to be removed. We don't put people on the bus unless we're pretty sure that we're not going to have to remove them because that's not comfortable for anybody. And we'll continue that practice for next year. We do not like to run empty buses, so if we have room, then people who are parents who want to apply as a non-eligible rider, we will take a look at it on a case-by-case basis. Stephen?
My question is also about transportation. I know that you've already informed the board a lot about the challenges with the new funding and stuff, so I appreciate that. And certainly looking forward to hearing hopefully some more things get resolved as we work out the details. One of my questions for next year, as you start to consider what you'll do for the 2024-25 school year, is what role do you think that active transportation will play in sort of an overall strategy? Like, will the division be considering how we can promote active transportation in addition to the busing, or are we going to consider them sort of separately? Because I just know that I think there's sometimes a sense in the division that we do tend to get feedback about the hours being around busing, even though that is not always the case. But we also, as a board priority, really do value wellness and well-being of students, and we want to, support students to get to school in whatever way works best for their family. And hopefully this adds an option, but wondering your thoughts on active transportation.
And to tell you that, to be honest, that's not an area, that's my area of expertise, because I'm worried about getting kids on buses. And if we're talking about getting kids to walk and bike to school, unfortunately, the 1 kilometer change by the government is not promoting that, in my opinion. So it is not my area. Usually, I would, and Cheryl can correct me if I'm wrong, that would be a school-based decision, not from the transportation area. So it's really not my own expertise. Great.
I would just like to, in light of what happened yesterday in Palliser, I'd just like to say that we're really pleased with the fact that we have a good safety record in Southland and that accidents can happen. I'm appreciative that nothing has happened to our students or our bus drivers. And so please pass that on from us because it's important to acknowledge the safety that they have. I mean, it was an unfortunate event in Palliser, but hopefully things will get solved.
Jenny and Andrew.
Sorry, I forgot to ask my last transportation question. With the feasibility not being able to be implemented until 2024, does the funding not come until then, or does the funding come 2023 and we use it for transportation, even if we haven't made those specific changes?
So the process that we'll be using to get our funding from the province water is actually going back to the old way we used to get funding. It's an application process, and it is quite extensive. We have to put in all our students, put in where they live, their distance from schools, what bus they're riding on, the distance, that sort of thing, and that is used to drive to funding. And so, so we'd only be funded for those kids that are being transported.
So to understand the answer to that question, so the funding that was announced for us is available, but if we, like if we're underfunded now, can we still access some of that without, we're not ready yet to run more buses yet? Can we still access some of that funding that's been announced for us, or are we just having to wait until we've been able to implement more buses? And
So the funding they announced for us is an estimate. And so our actual funding will be solidified and we'll apply for a grant in the fall. And we won't do that until we actually fill out our application in November, because we have to do a whole student demographic rollover and work with, it's quite complicated. And so we won't know until November. But my estimation of the money that they put in the budget, which they said would cover the additional, will barely cover what we're doing now. So I don't believe that maybe the province is using most up-to-date or correct data on possible demographics and changes.
which is what I understood, and that's why I asked that question. Can we still pull it for next year because we're pretty much like we need that money? That
Yeah,
amount now.
we need that money, and I believe when we file the application, we'll get the money that we need to operate as we are now, because we were funded for a number of years on our old way of transportation before we developed our rejigging of our boundaries. And we now have several buses, of course, coming across for LCI and Agnes Davidson that we did not have before. So we have more buses on the road that weren't funded for. So I think we'll get the funding for those when we do get it. But we have to see what all the data is.
So if our estimate was based on old information, when we do this in the fall, will that estimate be reassessed?
Yes, they will base our funding based on that application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions? Andrew?
When students go to a program where suited to their needs and it's not their home school, how is that transportation handled?
So that would be a school choice, and my understanding is that we can, if we have a bus available to do it, then we can get funding. But only if we actually are able to bus.
And if it was, say, the ELL program for limited formal education, would they be able to get a city bus pass? Is that something that happens?
I believe so, yeah. I'm still digging into the details, but my understanding is yes. Sorry, only if they qualify, like the 1 kilometer, meet the kilometer requirements.
Thank you, Christine. And next, we have instructional services.
It is staffing and budget season, so thank you in advance to HR and the likes of Davis and Christine as we work through getting people in the right seats on the bus and making sure we have enough people to service our kids for the fall. Not in the report, but additional pieces. Just want to say a very special thank you to Chinook High School for responding to the tragic event of the loss of a student the Sunday before last. And just an amazing experience that we had that Sunday with the Chinook team, with Jen Day, debriefing, planning for the following week, and it was truly an amazing experience to be part of. So just a special thank you to Chinook for their hard work there and very emotional, hard work. Nurse presentations are also happening this next week, so if you have any interest in seeing what the nurses from the University of Lethbridge have been up to over the last 3 months. They will be presenting some really neat projects around wellness. Special thank you to the board around attending the flag raising ceremony and the vacancy board. It was a great experience, great afternoon. Tom Littlebear and Shane Littlebear just did a fabulous job, and I don't think we could have had a better day for it. It wasn't too windy, but the flag flew, so that was a great piece. And then lastly, we are planning a visit for, well, anytime we start to look at our experiences and even some of the struggles that we're encountering with how to do things better and efficiencies within our system, instructional services is planning a trip. Road trip with counseling, inclusive ed, curriculum and instruction, and Indigenous education to visit Red Deer Public and Parkland School Division to just roll up our sleeves and team with those school divisions and just hear about what works for them. Because I think sometimes we think too much about what we're doing within and not looking, not without, but outside of our division. So I'm really looking forward to that May 4th and 5th as we start to plan for next year and looking for creative ways to meet needs in our schools. So that's just additional updates about the what I've included in that. Great.
I'm just wondering, under your package for Indigenous education update, we missed our drummers. Was that just an oversight? No, but we didn't mention names. If we can mention that, I think it's important. They did have a marvelous job too. And it was appreciated in their drumming for both the flag racing and
Questions or comments? Thank you very much, Lauren. And next we have Mike for human resources.
Thank you. So a couple of things. First of all, in the first segment, supporting our schools, where it just shows you the number of staffing things we've been doing recently. I know last time there was a question about, we had, it was 25 facilitating the hiring of 25 teachers. Question, where's that coming from? Some of that was a longer reporting period, just because of the way the board meetings worked out. And obviously the number's quite a bit lower this month here, but I did want to let you know that out of those 9 teacher positions that we did hires for this last month, 6 were due to medical, 3 were maternity, so just so you know. And anecdotally, it seems like maybe things are coming back to normal a little bit in the health world and AHS world, and seems to be more people are getting access to surgeries that maybe they deferred over COVID, that sort of thing. That's anecdotal. Take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but that's the impression I think. Under other highlights, I just want to call your attention. There's kind of 3 bullet points there. One about Rhonda and Stacy facilitating professional learning for head caretakers. There's one about I did a session with a group of intern teachers about how to get your first job in the teaching profession. And then Rhonda conducted mock interviews with students who are at Lethbridge College who are in the child and youth care program. So just wanted to highlight those. Those are things that we're kind of proud of. Those opportunities to sort of build capacity, and sometimes HR can be very process and paperwork driven, but also it can be capacity building and those sorts of things. And certainly we enjoy doing them, and they're great not only for the people in our school division, but also our partners outside of schools divisions. Just want to emphasize that. The other one I wanted to emphasize to you that we haven't really talked is it was Substitute Appreciation Week. That was the week of March 13th to March 17th. And a big thank you to Katie and to Garrett for all the work that they did to sort of organize that. So there were 2 thank you videos that were done. Cheryl, myself, and Allison all shared some words, and then a number of the schools, members from admin and teachers from GS Lakey, Winston Churchill, Vic Park, Lakeview, Galbraith, Emmanuel Christian Elementary School, Fleetwood, and Chinook all shared thank you in the video. Snacks were sent to schools, so subs can access them when they're at the schools. There was another thank you email sent out at the end of the week with a link to the videos, and then there was a draw for subs as well, where they make one sort of basket. So yeah, really appreciate the work that was done to recognize those folks. And if you go to the next page, just a quick overview of staffing. So as you know, we've already hired principalships at Nicholas Sharon, Gilbert Patterson. We do currently have, Kristen, would you be able to just go to the next page? We do currently have vice principal positions at Winston Churchill and Senator Joyce that we're in the process of filling those. And then we've actually started the teacher staffing process. So there's a bit of an update there in terms of what it looks like. So we've already shared a list of all the teachers and their contract status. Then what will happen is I review with every single principal. We go through every single one of those to make sure that we have the FTE right and the contract status right. And so that'll be about 600 plus contracts that we'll review in the next 2-3 weeks. Once we've done that, once we have allocations from the budget, then schools can actually start to make decisions on, can I offer people on probationary continuing contracts? Do we need to advertise positions? Then we fill temporary positions. And that process will be really busy from now into kind of mid-June. Should theoretically, hopefully, fingers crossed, slow down towards the end of June into July. There's always some work that needs to be done in August, that sort of thing, and then we'll be ready for day one and continue to staff for the year. So just wanted to give you a little overview of how that process works. That's it for me, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Mike, and your team. And next, moving on to superintendent's report. First one is board priorities report.
So I won't repeat some, but there's a lot in the report for trustees, of course, and so I just want to give a few highlights. Christine already mentioned the ICE scholarship, so certainly something we're proud of. It was the first time we did showcase in that format before, and so certainly a lot of good ideas for next year. I wanted to highlight the success of the Try the Trades. It was the second time that event launched, and so opportunity for our secondary students to sign up with a business. A very generous business community who sign up and spend 2 evenings hosting students to come and try hands-on trades. So a second time through, great success again. And then we've got the, that whole second section on the first page talks a lot about collaboration, and I have to say really fortunate to have a technology department as well as inclusive education department that really understands the benefit and the efficiencies that we have and the increased quality that we have when we collaborate with other organizations. Mike talked about human resources, just being really proactive. As a proactive group, they're going to the Job and Resources Community Fair at the end of this week. They're at the Walkabout, and as well as certainly our literacy, numeracy, and Karen Archer, director of curriculum, who's been working on last minute notification of second round of boost funding. Finally got told how much money we would get on Friday, so they're out trying to hire teachers to do the final rounds of boost intervention. Boost is focusing on literacy for grade 1 for the rest of the year, but of course we have to find teachers now. So she's out sort of doing that and train them. And I think as you look through there, you can see that our schools are really strongly accessing our literacy and numeracy teachers. And what I'm really loving to see is that creep up into middle school in terms of the use of assessment to drive best practice in literacy and numeracy. Now I'm on to the page of experiential learning, including secondary initiatives. I already talked about, I already talked about the Try a Trade event. I did talk about the Skills Canada competition that was hosted at Lethbridge College on March 18th, and we did have some gold winners in that competition. Very proud of those students. We've got all kinds of innovation and learning happening in our early learning program. Talked about the the Black Flag raising event, and then I'm going to keep going because Mark talked a lot about inclusive learning and division professional learning. That's where I'm at. So collaborative communities, support staff PL, teacher PL, and so on. And so when you take a look through there, it's really proud and excited that you see professional learning being offered across our employee groups. So you've got your collaborative communities for teachers. happening in April. We've got digital resource library being constructed for our support staff. We've got the CUPE leadership program that was structured by Rhonda and others, and we've got our EA Terabyte ready to launch. And as well as we've got a team of people going up to Calgary and sort of education to go to Pitt Dawson Smart but Scattered. So, you know, it's a very learning-centered group of employees and group of leaders that consistently focus on building the capacity of our staff. And collaborative partnerships to support learning, I talked about that and how our staff can take a look there. You've got that area has Jim Kerr and Jen Day, our council coordinator, and Jackie Fletcher, our education coordinator, the types of collaboration they engage in, as well as a number of cross-ministry initiatives that we're engaged in. And so when we think about collaboration, that extends to our business and operations department and Christine Lee and her ability to frame partnerships to leverage advantage for our school division. Really, when you take a look at the kinds of things that happen from that. And the teacher induction program, of course, continues. And with that, I'm done unless there's questions. Craig?
Two questions. One, government's moving to away from TELUS. And I'm just wondering, over 100 cell phone packages in our division, that seems to be quite a few. And I'm just wondering who has a cell phone that we're paying. Because if we have over 100 cell phone packages through our plan, are they all our employees or what?
Well, if you, so you would have every administrator has one, right? Because we're usually accessible after hours. We have, one per school for the caretaking teams. So you need to access, right? Our maintenance staff have one because they also use our program to get work tickets, cell phones, our technology staff. So you see it adds up quite quickly.
Thanks. And the other question I have is under administrator, professional learning, I'm always a little leery when we bring in activists to speak to our group. And I'm just wondering, does she give is that a person that would give a biased opinion or one that's clearly one that people can talk about and look at from both sides? So I get a little worried when there's the word activist in that.
Oh, good question, Craig. And certainly that speaker was brought in at the request of the school administrators. It was a recommendation by the school leadership team that we organized for her to come in. I would say that, really it was about a life story. And so I don't think one can necessarily represent their life story in a biased way. They just simply represent their story. And then that story serves as an impetus for conversations about how individuals impact that story, about how institutions impact that story, and give cause for reflection on what it is that we do within our institutions each and every day that influence the life stories of our children and youth.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Christina.
I actually also had a comment about that one. I love Panrocker, so I'm glad to see that they were invited. And it brought to mind that in a previous board report, there was mention that the SOGI procedures were still being worked on. Is that? Oh, great. And then I also had a question about the EAL intake and reviewing the limited formal schooling program. So in the report here, it's the EAL intake team completed 23 new EAL student intake interviews. Would you say that's a lot for 1 month? I was like, wow. Okay.
More egg.
Yeah, more
This was something that I think has been a long time coming in the 7 years that I've been here and slowly watched more and more newcomers come into our office first before they connect with the school. And it's a huge misstep because really then they connect with us before connecting to their school. And so a part of the intake process and a part of sort of reworking and training our administrative staff is making sure that our newcomers have a first landing and a soft landing with their schools versus coming to Lucy and then her having to connect with 200 people at the beginning of the year. That's going to require some training as well and some support. But I think then our newcomers are going to be able to connect to their schools and tell their story once they're at their school versus in multiple places, because quite often some of those stories are difficult stories to share, and it's not fun to repeat them numerous times. So hopefully avoiding an additional step and simplifying the process of registering our newcomers to Canada. And yes, that's a lot of people. Thanks, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My comment that I wrote is wow, that's a lot. So thank you for that. I appreciate the feedback about the process. Certainly anything that we can do to support newcomer students to feel welcome in their school communities is great. Because I would agree, actually. I think systems that allow people to connect where they will receive their day-to-day relationship and care should always be prioritized. So I appreciate that reflection. And I also just want to take a moment to remind the board and the public that we did discuss this last fall, when there was new funding available for Ukrainian newcomers. And we discussed as a board that because we have as a priority for our advocacy as a board that every student in our schools deserves funding. And there was new funding for Ukrainian students, which is great, and not for many other newcomers who come to us from around the world. And just something to keep on our minds that all of our students deserve funding and support, and I applaud and appreciate the division's work at every school and at the division office to ensure that those students receive the support that they require, regardless of sort of how the registration dates tend to line up, because we know most newcomers don't fly over the summer and don't arrive to us by September 30th. So, just something for the board to keep in mind that there is becoming this sort of two-tier approach to newcomers in terms of funding, and it's something that we can keep in our minds when we're advocating for funding for all students, that our newcomer students fall in this weird moment of they're under the federal jurisdiction for their migration, then they're under provincial for education, and then they're in our communities, and they're getting missed by every single one of those jurisdictions.
Thanks, Christina. Definitely a great reminder. And through ASPA, there's definitely lots of advocacy continuing on that piece of those needs that we have. Great.
I was just going to follow up on ASPA, is that do we have something on our books that says that all immigrants and people that come in should be funded the same way?
On ASPA's books?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No further questions. We'll move on. The acknowledgements. 4 minutes. Perfect.
And I bet you this is your best part of your agenda because you can't help but get excited about the showcase pieces that happen. And so we've got, there's your, I already talked about the Skills Canada, there's your medal winners in the Skills Canada competition. But certainly something to be proud of for sure in terms of the students that represented Electric School Division at Skills Canada. And we've got our GAS Lakey Middle School showcase there. How many of you were able to go to the GAS Lakey Oz production? Okay, oh my goodness. I ran into the University of, a new University of Lethbridge the person who's overseeing music education at the University of Lethbridge, he's new there. And he introduced himself to me, and he said that is, and he's from Ontario, he said, beyond measure, the best middle school production, beyond measure, that he's been to in his entire career. So I have to congratulate that. And you know what was most phenomenal about that production is it was an integration of the arts. Those teachers and students, over half the students in the school, worked together over the course of, their coursework in school to understand and learn about and know how to put together a multi-art production. So it certainly was phenomenal. It was an amazing show. And GSAP is not only about the fine arts, certainly they have all kinds of other things going on. Their sports are in there. As well, I wasn't able to go to Gatorstock. Did anyone here make it to Gatorstock? I guess that was phenomenal as well. The rock show, and I think there was a rock show. Was Patterson?
Patterson showed up, they were guest giggers.
Yes, it was Patterson, and so lots of fun happening there for sure. And of course, they've got their really committed to truth and reconciliation and looking forward with integrating Indigenous lens and Indigenous points of view in the Terry Fox Run, and of course all of the things that they're doing for their students academically. And we've got Galbraith there for you as well. And if you want to have a great experience, go to one of Galbraith's Enrichment Fridays, because certainly you'll see some students engaged in some really innovative kinds of activities that are intended to engage and get them coming to school on Fridays, and not just fun activities, but thinking activities where they're exploring. Their learning commons is certainly, as many of our learning commons become a real hub of learning and engagement. And of course, they've really done their family engagement nights are just sort of through the roof. And so the community, one example of community being thrilled to engage back with their school communities and be able to engage in the evening and during the day. And of course, yeah.
That dinosaur is unbelievable.
I know, it
It's
is.
3D and it's 6 feet long. I couldn't believe it happened.
It took them months to make the parts, so they had an actual excavation of a dinosaur that happened in the Learning Commons. All the dinosaur bones were made using the 3D printer, and the kids had to excavate the bones, and then they put the dinosaur together. Really cool project, right? And those are the kinds of projects that our Learning Commons are putting together. So if you get a chance, you do want to stop by Galbraith, go in the Learning Commons and see the 3D dinosaur excavation that the students engaged in. Nicholas Sharon Elementary School, and again, they've gone through a number of transitions as a school, if you recall, because of course they had the French immersion dual stream, then they're back to the English single stream, and they're really re-engaging their community as well, with a lot of evening events that engage their families. And they've been focusing a lot on, and that's Stephen Woodcock, the VP there as well as the principal, have done a lot of work in outdoor education and infusing outdoor activities into learning all through the season, not just in spring and fall, all through the season, winter included. And as well as Indigenous ways of knowing, and really excited in terms of what they call the Sci fusion, so infusing science into other kinds of learning that they're engaged in. And they've also been building and exploring new resources to support curriculum, anti-bias, anti-oppression work, and how to continue supporting students in learning outdoors.
Any questions? We do have, we're planning to go visit, is GSAP.
I think they changed the date on, they changed the
Yes, we
date
haven't
on.
confirmed the date yet, but we're going to next week. We'll be confirming that by the end of this week.
I think.
Nope, it's gonna be next week.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So we're gonna stop you right there. And we are going to do the provincial champions first, and then our Edward Parr second, just so that we can get kids on their way. So I will have Mike bring in our provincial champ. We're all hiding.
Thanks for being patient, Joelle. You're coming up.
It's Nicole. That's Nicole.
There we go.
Okay, so we're gonna switch and we're gonna do Edwin Parr first. Edwin Parr is here. Yep. Our nominee. Not Edwin Parr. Tracy, you can go sit though.
I want this to be Janelle's moment.
It is Janelle's moment.
Janelle's moment to share.
So we're very pleased today that we have our nominee for our Edwin Parr Award for Zone 6 representative that we're going to be sending forward. And I'll turn it over to Mike at this point to, or Cheryl, she's going to do our next step.
So welcome, Jamel. We're really excited to have you represent our school division. You know, I've seen you at Winston Churchill also. When I saw your, premiere video of the questions that you did, it's sort of like, okay, there's the rock star status person we're going to put forward as the nominee. Great job. What really came across in terms of seeing you in a school and seeing you on that video is the passion that you have for students and the deep care that you have about making a difference. And you talked a lot about engagement with students on your video, and that being a absolute goal of yours or an objective of yours to keep kids in school, keep them interested, keep them coming. And so we look forward certainly to the event itself, but for today we celebrate and honor your nomination and as our representative. And Tracy, you may have a few things to say about Jamel, or Jamel, you may want to share a few things about your experience at Winston Churchill so far this year.
So Tracy, oh, it doesn't.
Okay, no pressure. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Thank you guys so much. It's difficult for me to put into words what it means to be nominated for something like this. To have just been nominated at all was a huge honor for me. I want to be our district rep is it's a big deal. So thank you. I love my job. I really, really love my job. And I love my school, and I love my people that I get to work with. And I don't know that a lot of people actually get to say that earnestly because they love their job and they love where they work. So I'm very, very grateful, and I feel like what has allowed me to play the part I have and to have been here is because I am supported there and I am loved there. And I think that people who are supported and who are loved, it's easy for them to support and love people. And that's really our job, So I want to say thank you to you guys for making such an awesome place at Churchill and allowing me to thrive there. And it is a real privilege of mine to represent my school and represent the district. So thank you guys so much.
Wireless. I do want to say a couple things about Jamel. So
Jamal, this is really, as you can probably, I don't know if you can tell, because he's doing a great job, but Jamal doesn't like to be the center of attention, and he, I think, anytime we say, Jamal, you're doing so awesome, so humble, and he is so loving towards other humans that he has a hard time accepting that praise and accepting like the love that we give him. But I do want to say a couple of things. So the moment that Jamal came into our school, he came in as a PS3 student. It was very clear to us that he was exceptional and exceptional at building connections with students for the purpose of learning and creating environments where kids want to come into math. So you go into math class and kids cheer, because he has them cheer, math, 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 and he gets them cheering about math. The students that have the privilege of being in Jamal's math class talk about a place where they want to go every day. Students who haven't had success in math before feel confident, competent, excited to go to math, and they feel like their teacher really is invested in them being successful in math. And I could just go on about Jamal because Jamal coaches rugby. You probably saw in the write-up and in his information that he coaches rugby. He didn't play rugby in school, but what he wanted to do was contribute to the school outside of the classroom, and he will take any opportunity to do that. And you see that Jamal also directs the one acts with our drama teacher. And Jamal has a little bit of experience with drama, but that wasn't the thing that he came to school to do, right? But he contributes to our school in so many ways, and it's an honor to work with him every day. It really is. He's a wonderful teacher, but more than anything, he is a phenomenal human being. So, yes, yes, okay. That's
Well, thank you very much. We have our Edwin Parr Zone celebration is on May 17th, so I hope the majority of our trustees will be able to be there, and we'll be able to join you for supper out in Tabor. And I know you have interviews between now and then. I don't know, have they been scheduled? Not yet. Okay, so he has a big interview for the selection for Zone 6 coming up. But we wish you all the best of that. We're happy that you can be our Edwin Parr rep. So thank you and congratulations.
Thanks, everyone. See you.
Hey, good to see you.
So I'll just do a quick intro of who we have here with us today. So we have the Emmanuel Christian Secondary School Provincial 2A Girls Basketball Champions. They won gold. And then we're going to have those.
Now, did I just hear what you said in the champions? That's a 70s song, all right.
It's timeless, Cheryl.
It's obviously timeless. That was actually, yeah. You had to say that for it. We're really proud of you, provincial champions, absolutely symbolize that, you know, the pinnacle of your season. And the pinnacle of who you are as people and athletes. You don't reach that kind of performance without absolute commitment to each other. That's not easy. All being committed to each other as a team, compete, work together, work hard, and stay together as a team. It's only teams that win championships. Those that work together and who are interchangeable on the floor and practice together hard and work together hard. And individuals who are committed, basketball's a long season. And it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of time, And you sacrifice a lot to be a valued member of that team and to reach your potential as a player. And so it also takes, obviously, incredible athleticism. And so certainly that comes with hard work as well. And it comes with amazing coaching. Certainly teams don't make it to provincials and win provincials without having that solid coaching team behind you, as well as a solid family, supporting all the time that you take and all what they do to get you everywhere you're going through the sport. So congratulations. And certainly this is something to remember. We just want to give a small piece of our recognition to you as provincial championship. And so if I say names wrong, we should review this quickly first. All right, but I can start off easy. This is an easy one. Mike Reno.
Norm's not here.
Okay, now we can get Aaron. Oh, here's someone related, I think.
Oh, wait, that's my sister. She's not here.
Is she a coach too?
Yes.
Ooh. Oh, Emily Greeno.
Yeah, my wife and son are here today.
Oh. What a support, you guys have a great support team. Erica Hillman.
Oh, yeah, another supporter. She's water girl manager. Now, hopefully, there's
Now these are
players.
players.
Now they're players.
Hey, you can let it go. And it's a control board. I don't know, is it me? Holly? And and Nora. They're sitting on the stairs. You're welcome.
Can you take this? Yes, very.
Thank you, Dr. Fillmore. Thank you, everybody.
Good. So we will move on to our public presentation portion. So thank you, Nicole, for taking time to prepare a presentation for the board. We appreciate public members coming forward to express a concern or perspective. In accordance with policy 204.13, public presentations and forums, you have complied with the policy by notifying the board at least 14 days in advance and providing a background and briefing document. You have 15 minutes for your presentation. I will have our secretary treasurer, Christine, signal you when there is 2 minutes left and advise when the 15 minutes is up and presentation is finished. The board will listen carefully to your presentation and consider what you have provided as information. The board will not be providing a response or engage in dialogue following your presentation, but board members can, should they wish to do so, ask any clarifying questions following your presentation. We will not be providing a written follow-up response, but will respectfully consider your information in future planning processes and in our decision-making going forward. So I'll turn it over to you. We have Nicole Williams joining us, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Does it start now? Does the 15 minutes start now? Because I timed it, and it might have to cut me off, but I provided written. Okay. All right.
As soon as you start in on
Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. My name is Nicole Williams. My husband and I have our children attending a school within this division. I requested a public presentation because I would like to ask you to consider implementing a policy that specifically addresses the use of personal communication devices in our schools. In the spirit of transparency, I would like to make special note that I'm here today speaking to you all as a parent, and in no way am I representing the school our children attend. I am not speaking on behalf of our school. To start, I will explain how I think personal communication devices could be, and in some cases are, a contributing factor in two concerning realities that are facing our schools today. I've included some news stories and studies that are from outside of Canada, but I think are relevant because, as was mentioned in the last board meeting, this is a bigger global issue. First, there has been an increase in student violence and behaviors. During the January 24th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting, it was noted that the number of incidents that division employees have had to engage in since coming back from the holidays has been some of the highest numbers we have seen. Additionally, during the same meeting, it was also noted that our school bus drivers have been reporting increased instances of being distracted due to behaviors on the bus. TikTok's popularity among school-aged children and teens exploded during the pandemic. Although there is arguably a lot of great content on that platform, there is also a lot of garbage. This is an excerpt from a CBC News article posted on October 8, 2021. A social media challenge that encourages students to vandalize schools is wreaking havoc at high schools across Canada and the US, even leading to students being arrested in some cases. In September, a challenge dubbed Devious Licks, which is slang for theft, encouraged students to steal or damage school property and post videos to TikTok. In October, social media users attempted to get a Slap a Teacher challenge trending on social media. Social psychology professor Lucia O'Sullivan says the allure of getting attention and likes, combined with the protection anonymity provides for bad behavior, is a powerful draw for teens. Second, there's been a significant drop in standardized test scores. For example, the provincial averages show declines with 77.8% of Alberta students passing the Math 30-1 diploma in 2018-2019, then dropping to only 63.6% in 2021-2022. 86.8% of students passed the English 30-1 exam in 2018-19, with that number down to 78.8% in 2021-22. Similar struggles were reflected in provincial achievement tests for younger students in grades 6 and 9. The last few years have been hard on students.
lockdowns, online learning, and consistency. According to Savannah Johansson, Senior Policy Advisor with Alberta Education, we know that students' academic success and mental well-being suffered as a result of lockdowns and the learning loss that has occurred in recent years. According to a new analysis of over 40 studies from around the world, children lost an average of 1/3 of a year of school during the coronavirus pandemic. Now more than ever, students and teachers need our help. In a 2017 Washington Post article, Larry Rosen, a professor emeritus who studies the psychology of technology at California State University at Dominguez Hills, says research has shown that heavy users of cell phones feel anxious when they can't check their phones, and that anxiety interferes with learning. Their eyes may be on the teacher, but their minds are elsewhere. One study titled Later is Better, Mobile Phone Ownership and Child Academic Development, evidence from a longitudinal study, concluded that their findings suggest there may be significant educational costs arising from early mobile phone use by children. Parents and policymakers should consider whether the benefits of phone availability for children are sufficiently large to justify such costs. This is an excerpt from a 2022 article by Paul W. Bennett, who is the director of Schoolhouse Institute in Halifax, the adjunct professor of education at St. Mary's University, and the national coordinator of Research Ed in Canada. Serious gaps in student learning, psychosocial impacts, and academic achievement setbacks are now more visible from province to province in Canadian K-12 education. But what's less recognized and largely unaddressed is the profound impact of students' near total fixation with cell phones and complete absorption in cyber worlds. Promoters of EdTech have sold classroom teachers, parents, and policymakers a bill of goods. Teachers are now facing an uphill battle to reclaim the attention of the pandemic generation of students who may be far more adept at accessing and using tech toys, but who are also being profoundly affected by total immersion in constant connectivity, texting, and time-absorbing social media. It's next to impossible to learn or read with comprehension while keeping one eye on a phone, scrolling for videos, and being constantly interrupted while attempting to pay attention to your teachers. Multitasking is being exposed as a myth, and new evidence-based research is emerging which connects the proliferation of advanced cell phones with distractibility in workplaces and schools, contributing to more frequent errors, higher levels of stress, reduced cognitive ability, and lower productivity. Screen time is crowding out teaching and learning, most notable in declining reading proficiency. Spending so much time on mobile phones, even without social media, adversely affects attention and concentration skills, making it harder to focus fully on any task and maintain that focus. When students are simply unable to focus or pay attention, learning to read through systematic literacy programs or tackling more rigorous academic tasks and higher grades becomes doubly difficult for teachers in today's classrooms. Sachin Maharaj is a PhD candidate and Canada Graduate Scholar in Educational Policy at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. In her 2017 opinion article, she writes, "While phones in the classroom can have legitimate educational uses, the reality is that in practice they're used by students in ways that impede their ability to learn. For example, a 2016 National Science Foundation funded study found that when given the opportunity, even the most intelligent and motivated students access the internet in class primarily for non-educational purposes like browsing social media. They spend more time browsing than paying attention to their class, and their academic performance suffers as a result." Research by Microsoft has found that between 2000 and 2013, the average Canadian attention span decreased by 33% and is now shorter than the average attention span of a goldfish. Furthermore, Microsoft has found that the main culprit behind our dwindling attention span is the addictive nature of our phones, and the problem is most acute among younger people. What people seem to forget is that this is all by design, as is now being revealed by Tristan Harris, an engineer who has worked at Apple and Google. The whole business model of tech companies centers on making their phones and apps as addicting as possible. Harris states that unbeknownst to much of the public, there is this war going on between tech companies to get as much attention as possible. It's a race to the bottom of the brainstem to get people's attention at all costs. An example of this comes from the CEO of Netflix, who recently stated that it sees its biggest competitor as not YouTube or Facebook, but sleep. We should be especially concerned about Snapchat, which is considered by many experts to be the most addicting app, as research from Harvard has shown that Snapchat use can produce alarmingly high levels of anxiety among teens. And while technology use is often cast as an issue of personal responsibility, Harris reminds us there are thousands of the smartest people in the world working at these tech companies, employing principles of behavioral psychology precisely to overcome your willpower. Can any high school student or teacher really be expected to compete with that? Many Silicon Valley execs send their children to technology-free Waldorf schools which emphasize human interaction and hands-on learning. The reason? According to Chris Anderson, the former editor of Wired magazine, it's because we've seen the dangers of technology firsthand. I've seen it myself. I don't want to see that happen to my kids. Closer to home, the former principal of Lawrence Grassley Middle School in Canmore said in an interview with Calgary Eye Opener, "We were finding that the use of cell phones during breaks was interfering with students' learning. After, it's hard for them to focus." As well, Lawrence Grassley's administration found that social media apps like Snapchat were negatively affecting student socialization. The principal said it was creating a culture where we would prefer that students interacted more and not be on their devices. Along with these realities facing our students and teachers is the potential for students to be exposed to online material that their parents would deem to be inappropriate. Not all kids have the same age restrictions set on their phones. So I imagine there has been situations in our school where a child watches a video with a classmate on their device during break that the parents would not be okay with. Wouldn't this create a headache for school administration when they get a call from an angry parent who has just learned their child, while on school property during school hours, has seen something that the parent thinks is wildly inappropriate? Additionally, there are countless studies, books, and articles that explain how and why social media use, too much screen time, cell phone technology overuse, and excessive gaming can lead to increased rates of self-harm, suicidality, mental distress, cyberbullying, chronic sleep deprivation, addiction, negative effects on cognitive control, academic performance, and socio-emotional functioning. And finally, I think it is problematic and unnecessary for kindergarten to grade 9 students to be carrying around devices during school that allow them to take pictures and videos which they can then upload to social media with the click of a button. I'm not confident that students in this age group fully understand how once a video or picture is posted online, it's impossible to remove it. And not only does this have the potential to do harm to someone else, but that could haunt you for the rest of your life. Ultimately, I believe parents and caregivers have the biggest role to play in teaching our children how to be responsible digital citizens. But I acknowledge that our schools have a role to play in the development as well. It is unrealistic to ban all personal communication devices from schools. And there's no magic policy that can solve the complex problems facing teachers and students. That being said, I think what we have now in regards to policy as it relates to personal communication device use in schools is vague. I went through a number of policies that I thought would address personal communication devices to see if there was any clear guidelines and or rules for teachers and students. I couldn't find anything. Results from the recent ThoughtStream and online survey revealed that staff would like a clear phone policy. Parents have requested less phone use and limit to tech, and the community thinks that tech use should be intentional. I would suggest that all of the above could be addressed by passing a personal communication device policy. And our school division could look to one of Alberta's largest school divisions who has already passed such a policy for direction. In May 27, 2019, news release, it was announced that Policy 24 passed at a regular board meeting of the Elk Island Public Schools Board of Trustees meeting. And it outlines how students and staff use cell phones and personal devices within EIPS schools. The goal? To ensure all students use technology responsibly and develop skills in digital citizenship. The creation of the policy is based on the prevalent use of cell phones and other communication devices by students of all ages and the challenges it presents for teachers. Recent research into digital technology use among children and teens also raises concerns over the impact cell phone use has on mental and physical health, social well-being, and readiness to learn. Before making any decisions, it was critical for the board to have a clear understanding of what constitutes appropriate use of cell phones and other personal devices in schools, says Trina Boyhood, the board chair. When we reached out to the school community, the response was incredible. The vast majority of respondents were in agreement. Age-appropriate limits are important in fostering positive learning environments and maintaining overall health and well-being. I think the Elk Island policy is clear, concise, and realistic, and Elk Island didn't take an all or nothing approach. I think their policy is well balanced. I did reach out to Elk Island administration for
2 minutes left.
and administration informed me that the overarching feedback to this policy has been positive and well received by parents and students. There are a number of schools in Alberta that have added clear guidelines and rules into their parent-student handbooks, which is an option for individual schools. Lawrence Grassy Middle School has stated in their handbook that personal digital devices are to be in student backpacks and lockers from the start of homeroom until after the last period of the day, and this includes morning and lunch breaks while on school property. Lawrence Grassy School Administration has expressed to me that this addition to their parent and student handbook has been immensely helpful for students and staff alike. I'd love to see our school division implement a policy very similar, identical even to Elk Island's, but the first step should be to create a school-based survey specific to personal device use and distribute the survey to all students, staff, parents, and caregivers, because I think it is important to give everyone the opportunity to have a voice before policies are drafted and voted on, because policies affect everyone. Of course, it's important to acknowledge the positive aspects of technology and personal communication devices in school. Children who have been diagnosed with cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disability, epilepsy, and blindness can have significant communication deficits. There is evidence that shows marked increases in the students' communication skills and non-academic school functioning when the students and teachers utilized an Apple iPad with the Go Talk Now communication application. As well, there are diabetic students who utilize apps to track their blood sugars. In conclusion, we know so much more now about the harms and risks of social media personal communication devices and technology use as it pertains to children and teens. I would like to close my presentation with the closing remarks Sachin Maharaj made in her opinion piece. As MIT psychologist Sherry Turkle has found in her research, our complete capitulation to technology has led to the denigration of many human capacities. At the very least, school boards should not be complicit in inflicting this damage on their students. Thank you so much for listening to me, affording me so much of your time and your consideration.
I would think that you totally planned that. Like Jessica. So I thank you, Nicole. I just looked to the trustees to see if there are any clarifying questions that you would like to ask. Jenny, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you and well put together, so I appreciate that, and that was impressive. And I'm sorry for the extra stress that must have caused for you. So I just want to say thank you, and I think that I appreciate you doing it so that you refer back to you as well. So and for your story.
I appreciate as well you coming in, Nicole. I'm wondering, I liked being able to follow along. I'm just wondering, I saw quite a number of links in there. Would you be able to send Kristen a copy of this so that we could access the links for the trustees that did wish to click on the links? Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Nicole. And you're welcome to stay and join us for the rest of the meeting, or we'll see you soon. Thank you. So we are going to go ahead and go to our LCI international trip. So Morag. Come on up to the hot seat. Yeah.
So as Joel makes her way up, LCI.
We'll just pull Wayne in as well.
Yeah, well, I saw him on. He's out there. I'm going to get the cab. I'll let you talk. Oh, okay.
So we usually have about 60 to 70, but it won't be that many for the trip because it's September 1st. Yeah, so we have to plan it now. And we'll probably get about 20 to 30.
I didn't want to go.
I thought it was like,
Wrestling or CrossFit.
I know, right? I was thinking a trip, they go to Europe, they go to, I want to go to Canada.
Yeah.
Then I read it and I was like, oh, okay.
You know, it's a stage, right?
Yeah. Good place to run. Good place to run. Exactly.
Anywhere.
I do. It's not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
As I say, we're gonna move on without waiting, so we don't have.
We can move on to the calendar of events. That'll be quick. So calendar of events are there. Is there anything we need to add to the calendar of events? I think Kristen and I kind of caught everything with Cheryl as well. Calendar events, Craig is something done.
April 12th and 13th, Public School Board Association.
Perfect. Okay. Not seeing anything else. We're good with calendar events. No, he's not coming. Okay, so we will go ahead, Jorge.
So we know that LCI has got a trip coming, approximately 20 grade 9 to 12 students. International trip, it sounds very luxurious, but it's really just over the border to Cut Bank, Montana, September 1st for a cross-country running competition. And so we just want to recommend that the LCI trip to Cut Bank, Montana, September 2023 be approved by the board on the condition that all division policies and procedures are strictly followed. And there's some details around the trip in your package.
Do you want to tell us a bit about
Yeah.
your trip? You're like, why
I mean,
didn't she
there's
even
not
come?
a lot to say. You kind of mentioned it all.
Or it says talk.
Oh, it's like, it looks like a screen. So yeah, there's not a lot to say about the trip to Cut Bank. It's about 40 minutes south of the Delaware border. It really looks like the outskirts of Lethbridge, except population size is about 3,000. There's a subway, it's really good, we've been there before. But we have been to Cut Bank before in the past. I did have the opportunity to take the kids across the border. It's a really, really good opportunity for them to participate in another meet, and a little bit more exotic, because you know, you're competing against the United States, which is absolutely incredible, even though it's just Cut Bank. Still awesome. When we took the kids across the border last time to run, we had won provincial championships the year before, and we were expecting to do really, really well, but we hadn't started our training season. They didn't do too good. They actually did terribly, which actually ignited the fire, and then we ended up winning another provincial championship. So we're hoping to do the same thing again. COVID hit, we haven't been able to do that, so now is a good opportunity to do it again. So let's ignite that fire and let's get them across the border to run that extra run. And yeah, it's a good opportunity also for team building. Country is a team sport. We need every single number to count towards our goal, the points, I guess. So yeah, so we're really excited. We hope that we're able to go. And we hope that we can generate some interest as well for the program, because we are now a 4A school. And to be able to win another provincial championship, we really need to start increasing our numbers. So hopefully that helps, and get some friends and family on board, and get as many kids as we can down to Cut Bank.
Thanks, Joel. I think Andrea has a question.
Yeah, I think it's so nice that it's so close but international, so that's wonderful. And will you do individual fundraising or team fundraising?
So we already have the Donut Dash. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but the cross country, the LCI cross country team puts on the Donut Dash. So it's just a loop around Henderson, and whoever decides to participate, it's $20 to participate, and they have to eat a donut 3 times throughout the stop, and that is. And then of course we have the teenagers who finish, and then they eat 20 donuts. So that's great. But that is our main funding source for this trip.
And
That's great. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Craig, go ahead.
Just a concern about the travel, because I go down to the States quite a bit, and lately it's been difficult to cross at Del Bonita. You don't know if they're open or what times they're doing, so do you have a backup plan in case the Del Bonita is closed?
Yes, well, the backup plan would be to go to the other, yes. And of course, I would do my research before going down to see which option would be the best option.
Okay, thanks.
An insurance question, are students required to purchase insurance?
To purchase
So
themselves.
to have insurance, like what does the insurance look like for international travel for students?
Christine?
I can answer that. Thank you.
They're not,
They're not, I didn't see it included, so I was just, they're not required to purchase additional insurance. We do have, like student coverage.
Tyler?
Board rules are changing April 1, so Del Bonita is actually going to be open 7 days a week. Carway is now going to 9 p.m. They're reopening all the borders, so you got that going for you. It's just 24 hours anyway. But my question was in regard to, assuming roughly 20 kids go, what do you have going for adults, chaperones? How many people are there? How many coaches? Are just coaches, or are there some parents, or how's that work?
Yeah, so we open it up to parents as well if they would like to come with us. But we always have, so we have our 2 community coaches, our head coaches. We actually have quite a few community coaches. We have about 6 or 7 community coaches, but 2 head coaches. So we have Aaron Pinder and Bruce Stewart, who are now our head coaches. And we also have teacher coaches who are interested in coming as well. So there's myself, and there's also Alyssa Sutherland, and then Janine Ward is also interested. So we have at least 5.
Seeing no more questions, is there a trustee that would like to make a motion? Tyler, go ahead.
I move that the LCI trip to Cutbank, Montana in September 2023 be approved by the board on the condition that all division policies and procedures are strictly followed.
Seeing no further questions or comments, those in favor? And that's carried. Enjoy your trip and enjoy your training. Thanks, Joelle. Enjoy Subway. Then we have Avis has joined us, so we're going to have Avis come on up to the front. We're going to go ahead to 9.3, our second quarter financial report. Thanks. Right?
Just before we start, I'd like to congratulate Avis and her team. They won the box field and they're going to provincials for hurling.
That's your good job. Tonight at 6, well then we've got to get you on the phone.
All right, so I'm happy to be here to present the 2022-2023 second quarter report, ending February 28th, 2023. This presentation is an overview of the quarterly report that you would have received in your board package. And this report is based on the operating budget, which is the September 30th adopted budget, just so that being different from the financial statements. There are 2 areas to note that have changed, that we've updated since additional information has come since September 30th. 2 additional amounts from Alberta Education funding have been received. Back in the September, we knew about the Ukrainian supports as well as supplementary enrollment growth. So we actually received 2 additional amounts. So we received 27,500 additional for Ukrainian supports and 37,785 for enrollment growth. So those weren't known when we did the September 30th budget. We received them earlier in February, so that's always nice when there's extra money. The other area that we're going to get into a little bit is there's additional $500,000 in additional revenues and expenses for the international program, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. So as per previous budget presentations, the half circles, budget line is blue, forecasted line is green, red line will show the actuals. Same with the full circle, budget line is blue, forecast is green, and year-to-date spent is red. There's also check marks within each area. The green check mark means expenses are within forecasted costs. The blue check mark means there are revenues to cover cost increases, and the yellow check mark means that expenses are over forecasted amounts but are still projected to be within budget by the end of the year. And the black dash is above forecasted. So we'll start with revenues. As of February 28th, 2023, 49.9% of revenues have been received. Overall comparable to forecast, 49.9% actual versus 50.8% forecast. The variances over the forecasted amounts relate to Government of Alberta, the timing of their payments, and those additional payments that we just discussed. And investment income is higher than budgeted due to higher interest rates on the divisions in GICs. These are offset by lower than forecasted school fees. So all school fees are budgeted in the budget, but not all. We do like a total fee, total students, and kind of project what the potential, the maximum amount could be that would be charged. So that number is under because not all students are participating, not all programs maybe are running to the projected amounts that were initially submitted back in the fall. So those are two kind of, they're just offsetting overall. Does anybody have any questions? You always know, just also say if you do. Next we'll move to expenditures. So overall comparable to forecast, 50.8% actual versus 52.2% forecasted. We'll go into both the type and the departments. So first things first, we'll start with pre-K. So pre-K is at 47.8% of their total budget. This is within their forecasted cost of 50%. There were some savings within staffing and supplies, and it's also, it was, at this time last year, it was also at 47.8%. Exactly, so that's interesting to know that there's comparable in the 2 years, so it overall was in line with budget. Next, instruction is at 49.8% of their total budget compared to 51.1% in the prior year. Some items, larger items and supplies are still to be purchased before June, and the SGF funds that we just talked about are lower than forecasted as well, but overall it is considered in line with budget. Operations and maintenance is at 54.6% of their total budget, compared to the forecast of 55.2%. This is under forecasted costs. There's been a bit of savings within insurance, as well as the timing of projects fluctuates throughout the year, but overall is considered in line with budget. Transportation is at 56.7% of their total budget. This is also within forecasted costs of 59.2%. The other thing the fuel contingency we're also receiving around, it usually varies between $6,000 and $8,000 a month. And so this last quarter, we got about $25,000. Yes, which is always good. System administration is slightly over forecasted costs. So in Q2, there was an additional audit that was required by Alberta Education that was finalized in December for the new asset retirement obligation standards that are coming into implementation this year. And so several school divisions throughout the province were selected for this audit, and there was no additional funding to cover that cost. But we do still anticipate by the end of the year that this area will be within budget. Yeah, of course.
And that audit was like $8,000.
It was about, that wasn't all of it, I guess. Yeah, it was, there's that as well as, in Q1, I think we talked about this too, just briefly. There was the Power School contract is shifting because it used to start in February and now we're switching it to start in September. So there's a little bit of timing there as well. Yeah.
Sorry, that sounded Here you
so
go,
the audit
no
was not
funding.
80,000, but yes, no. But yes, that is a good question, absolutely, no, absolutely.
Sorry.
Oh, of course, yes, yeah.
Can I just follow that up?
Yeah.
With the Power School contract shifting, will that even out, or like, are we just cost of work with the timing?
Yeah, we moved the timing, and so there was a little bit in prepaid at the beginning of this year that's now being recognized. So I think once everything gets set up so it matches our fiscal year, everything will even out.
Okay, and sorry, can you
Tell
us the audit, sorry, can you tell us a few more
Okay,
details to
absolutely,
that?
so,
Sorry.
absolutely, so, Alberta Education, okay, back up first, before Alberta Education, there is a new accounting standard coming in starting April 1st, 2023, called Asset Retirement Obligation. I know we've briefly kind of talked on it. Basically, we have to account for the future value. If we were to sell all of our properties tomorrow, what would the value be to get them to, basically it's to cover asbestos, is more or less to get into remediation, yes, to get that to, basically that you could sell the building tomorrow, what would the cost be to get everything, like, it's not up to code, because that's not the right wording, but it's like up to sellable, yes. There's a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes for that, and so Alberta Education kind of wanted to get a feel for what the different school divisions, what it looked like, because some school divisions, like Lethbridge School Division, hired a third party to help estimate what that cost would be, whereas other school divisions hadn't done that yet. So they just kind of wanted to see, I guess, what the range would be, what we were working with. Everything was clean, it was clean audit, so nothing to worry about there. And yeah, does that, I guess, give you a little bit more context?
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you. So was that added cost, did that come from hiring a third party to do that for us?
That was done several years ago. This was the cost of the auditors to come and do the audit, because it was a specialized audit, so they.
And that's spent from Alberta.
Well, the auditor is a third party, like we use BDO,
okay, but
and then there's a requirement from Alberta Education to do the audit.
Correct. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet, of course, absolutely. So now we will just talk about External Services International Program. So as previously mentioned, the international program is at 93.6% spent. However, it's been very successful for 22-23. So it had been budgeted for $300,000 because we weren't sure what it was going to look like, what the world was going to look like. The $300,000 had been consistent for the last number of years as the budgeted number. However, in addition to the deferred revenue on August 31st, 2022, which is amounts that have been paid by students in 21-22 but are attending in 22-23, and the amounts that have been received in 22-23 for students who are also coming in 22-23, it's about $800,000, which is wonderful. Like is very good. So the problem, I guess not the problem, but right now we're showing we are overspent. This program is a self-sustaining program. Money that comes in is spent in the program, and it covers all the costs. So no other money is coming from other areas to cover these costs. It is a money in, money out area. So in order to better reflect that, $500,000 has been added to the revenue on the budget, and
No, that's okay. No, I just want to clarify, this program doesn't cost us $800,000. The money that is not spent in this program actually goes back in a per student to the schools that are hosting those kids. And most of it does.
Yes.
Some is capped at the end of the year, but most of that money will go back to those schools. And so that's determined when we get closer to year end what is available. And then, so that's it doesn't cost us.
No, yes, sorry, definitely not that. But the main thing I just want to get across is that this is its own area. So when you do see this, and it looks, yeah, you look at everything else and everything is staying on 50, 60, and then you see this, it looks off. And so I want to just make sure that everybody understands that this is actually a good thing. We also are discussing for 23-24 what the budget amount will be to better reflect the increase in the uptake of the program. Next, we'll just go go over the types of expenses. So salaries, benefits, and professional development, 51.1% versus 51 for forecast. So this is just an overage of approximately $100,000. Mostly, there's no concerns here. It's mostly just timing. Overall, we're still going to be within our forecasted costs by the end of the year. So, does anybody have any questions on that? Just to make sure that it is over, but the amount is. For contracted services, this is our audit, legal, consulting, utilities, transportation, maintenance, and safety and wellness. It is at 57.9% spent. The forecast is 58%. So it's right in line again. There's an approximate $2,600 difference. So it's considered within budget. Other services is 86% actual versus 84.1% forecast. So the reason this is over forecast is this is where the international programs is included. So as we've previously discussed, that it's considered to be in line by the end of the year. It is, however, over its forecasted for at this point in time. Supplies is at 45.7% actual versus 52.5% forecast. Again, there's still some large purchases to be finalized by the end of the school year, and it's considered in line with budget. Other expenditures, 38.7% actual versus 50.2% forecast. This area has contingency and travel, which have been both lower than forecasted costs, so it's considered in line with budget. And last but not least is our transfers, SGF and IMR spending, 41.3% actual versus 52.5% forecast. As we previously talked about, that the school generated funds is lower than forecasted costs. All fees are budgeted for, but they're not ended up being charged throughout the year, so it is considered in line with budget. Yeah.
Sorry, this one is, what is this one? Can you break this one down for me?
Absolutely. So, in this transfers SGF, yeah, absolutely. So, bank charges is fairly self-explanatory. The SGF expenses. So, when we have money come in for SGF revenues, the money goes out for SGF expenses. School generated funds. Sorry, yes. And so our revenues are under forecasted, which would then correlate to our expenses are also under forecasted. Because it's again kind of money in, money out is the main area in here.
Sorry, I don't understand.
That's okay.
This clearly, probably everybody else
No,
in the
that's
room
okay.
does. But does that mean that our schools are generating less funds than they used to?
No. So what it means is when we do our budgeted forecast, we get the schools to list, okay, here's all the programs, here's the maximum amount of students that would potentially participate in that program. And then we in the spreadsheet, there's like an unlikely, very likely, and it kind of toggles the amount of participation in said program. So right now we're budgeting for if every program was doing everything that it was planning to do for the year, that's the amount that's in here right now.
Okay.
So it's under, which is to be expected because we don't expect every fee that for every student to be charged or to be incurred during the school year.
Okay. What the reason I'm asking is because I've noticed with my kids' activities in a school where we used to use school cash online, now they're asking for cash. Is that reflecting here?
It would be the same, like regardless of how the money is brought in, it would be in here.
It would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you bet. So just the financial position at February 20th, 2023. The division has net financial assets of $12.93 million, which is a decrease from the prior year at the same time of $16.58 million. The majority of this decrease is from a reduction of cash and cash equivalents, which is due to the spending of reserves. And as well, the division in the last quarter collected a large outstanding receivable from Alberta Education for the final payment of Dr. Claxton Elementary School. The non-financial assets and the related spent deferred capital contributions have decreased from the prior year, and that is to amortization, so recording that the useful life of the assets. And then if anybody has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Is there Like an objective number for when it's too far under budget? Or if you just have, like, you have the rationale for it, you consider it to be in budget? Like if the spending has been less than
Yeah, like,
expected?
if it's less than expected, I would say that we know that's why there's a reason for that. And so then say at the end of the year, we're like, oh, okay, like this was underspent because of X, Y, and Z. We'll see if it is a continuing trend, and then it might need to, obviously the budgeted number would then need to be reanalyzed. Same thing with anything that's overspent as well too. If there's a pressure somewhere that it's like, okay, what's going on here? What's kind of dig a little deeper.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's challenging, like, I think objectively often people are like, great, savings, which is good, but not always good, right? Like, we don't want to underspend our teachers, right? So I applaud the very close alignment to the forecast on staffing. That's really hard to hit the line. Yeah, so I just wanted to.
Absolutely. No, and that's a question, because sometimes it's like, okay, well, what does this number mean then, right? And if it's not being supported with an explanation, then it's like, we're not just on space. Yeah.
Andrea?
Thanks for making that so understandable. You always do such a great job. The new money that came for enrollment growth, what is it earmarked for? Where does it go?
Right now it is in like it's not a restricted amount, so it is just going to any hotspots that we might know that kind of come up throughout the year. Oh, yeah.
It was used in the, when we updated the September 30th budget, we allocated it as part of the contingency. So, yeah, we would put it on staff.
Any other questions? You did a good job, I guess. No big tough questions.
No, that's okay.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm happy to see you guys, and yeah, thank you for all your questions. The questions you asked, I really enjoyed. So, it just needs to be a motion.
Yes.
Okay.
So just looking for a motion to accept the report. Andrea,
I make a motion to accept the second quarter financial report.
just making sure Kristen is getting that. So Andrea made that motion, perfect. And any other further questions or comments? Those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Avis. And good luck. Who do you play first?
We play a team from Spring Bay.
Right.
Kick ass, yes. Thank you very much. I'll try and make one of your games. Sounds good.
Perfect. So we will circle back up to where we were, which was donations and support. We will need to flip in their agendas. So let's just give Cheryl a few minutes to get to that. We did, yeah. And Craig added the SBA ones.
And so just as, for the purpose of the calendar of events, if you've got meetings that Kristen would not be aware of unless she's informed, just let her know ahead, and then we can try to make sure that they're in the calendar of events. That'll be, then we don't, everyone will have them there. Donation fees support are there. $3,000 from Fly Fishing and Foundation in Jardin Foundation. In generous businesses, certainly. And all the sponsors for scholarship, and Christine Lane works her magic networking with all of those to get some donations for that event. And
it's great to have all the sponsors that we have.
It is.
The things that we do in our division, I know on the poverty, I know we did it as our consent agenda, but I saw on the poverty convention, we have the donation for the land bags, so that's great, all the support that we do get. And then next, we are jumping into policy review. So now we jump down to 9.2. And I'll give you a couple minutes to get that.
Okay, the first one is 501.2, eligibility for early childhood services. The red is what we've added. And then there's been some small deletions, but nothing major. Other than the one big addition is that in this policy, we had not mentioned that kindergarten is intended as a one-year program the year prior to grade 1. So that needed to be added. And then, of course, the references, it's now the Education Act and some of the stuff, regulations from Alberta Ed. Any questions on 501.2?
Christina, go ahead.
I was just confused about the wording under the regulations for the eligibility. Just like the 1.1 indicates that people apply and 1.2 indicates the funding. So it's just like the two categories. So you can come if you're less than 5 and qualify for Alberta Ed.
Well, I'll let you know, but as my understanding, it's basically the kids on tough funding. And early, if there's a disability there. But Cheryl,
I guess I'm just confused because like the first sentence of the regulation indicates that the program's eligibility is defined by the age, but then it also measures by E or not.
I'm just reading through, so eligibility for the early education program, that's early ed, right? So that's for kiddos age 3 and 4 is defined by a child's age and includes children who are less than 5, right? So you cannot be 5 and receive early education, right? But you are still eligible for kindergarten PUP, right? The current school year, but older than 3 years, right? So that's early ed programming only is what we're talking about. They're not kindergarten programming. And then
So that's more of our non-PUP ed kids.
Yes.
Am I right? That would be our non-PUP coded early education program children.
And children who are less than 5 years of age as of December 31st of the current school year and qualify for, yes, so that's again early education, not kindergarten. You have to be 5 to access kindergarten in your September 1 year. So that's correct. That's your early ed, non-PUP qualifications.
Jenny?
I don't, is that accurate? Do you have to be, oh, yeah, you.
For kindergarten.
Yeah.
For 5, for kindergarten, what's our cutoff date?
Just like, yeah.
Right, okay, but I see what you're saying, it's confusing.
I just feel like it's like a duplication, because it adds like a qualifier of the fee, and it's they're both in there.
The funded and non-funded kids.
That's correct. Yeah, there's fee-paying students in the program and then students who are funded by Alberta Education.
And our children qualify for Alberta Education potentially younger than 3 years old?
They have 2.5. They turn 3 in December of that year, yes.
Okay, so I think that was just a missing piece, but I think that's the only differentiation.
That's why there's
Okay, yeah, thank you. Because there's just not a lower limit on the age for 1.2. So I was just.
Does that clarify enough, or you want to say something different? You're good?
It works for the program.
It is what's in the funding manual.
Yeah, that wording. Andrea?
My question is under number 2. There are children born in November and December turning 6 who would not, their parents would choose not to send them to kindergarten that year, to grade 1 that year, who would be entering kindergarten as well as the children within this age. Do we need to specify that in there? Because under the Education Act, a child who is 6 as of the first day of school needs to go to school. But if they're turning 6 after, they could go for their first year of kindergarten at the age of 6. So do we need to put that in there, or is that just a?
No, because it says children whose 5th birthday falls there, so anyone after that is okay. And those are just after that. Like 2.1. Yeah.
She's saying if they're 6 and they still go to kindergarten.
They can.
If it's their first year, we're silent on that.
Yeah.
You don't
So we
have
don't
to
have to put that
Please
in
use
there.
your mic.
You don't have to specify, I can't.
I was just gonna say, we're silent on that, right? Because really, it's after 5.
Is that Andrea, you're wanting change?
As long as we have not mandatory, then parents still has that choice.
Craig?
I guess I move that we accept 501.2, policy 501.2, eligibility for early childhood services as amended.
Any further discussion? Those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, 503.5. On that one, you can see the changes are in red. We added technology. We've added individuals, organizations participating in the organization, delivery and supervision of student activities that fall within the scope of the policy, and the participating organizations and or individuals. And then on the next page, we did ask, under 10, that division staff shall not participate in the planning, supervision, or support of any student activity involving consumption of controlled substances. The division shall not provide access to division facilities for any activity involving the consumption of controlled substances. And then again, there's the changes to the Education Act and the division policies. And we had to put that in, I think, because there are some students that could turn 18 while they're in school, and now that marijuana is a legal substance, we have to put that in so that they do not bring that into the schools. And we also recommended to the board that this policy be removed as a policy and be changed to a procedure. So we would like to hear your comments on this, and that, about our recommendation plus any changes in it.
Comments on the changes that you see in red, or if we move to the procedure?
I just had a question first. Okay, I can see, first of all, I guess I can say moving into a procedure, there's not really involved here. It doesn't make any sense. So that's fine. I'm good with that. I'm confused a little bit on there's now a policy though that each school shall develop procedures governing student activities. Can I find those? Like are they actually written down somewhere? Can I go to, that's my question, is it? Okay, I don't know, that's what I'm asking. Like, I'm wondering even if for the new, like e-gaming, esports, if there's actual procedures now somewhere, because that's a new thing that's happened. Or do those procedures exist somewhere where I can read them? I don't know if they do. They might. I just don't know.
The reason I know they do is because that was the esports I asked to speak. And so I wouldn't say though they're as visible as the school handbook. Sometimes they're part of that sport parent handbook or that sport athlete handbook. But that's a really good question, like how accessible are these procedures governing student activities? That's a really good conversation with secondary principals, yeah, because often they are in a specific sport, parent or athlete.
Jeremy?
Sorry, the reason that I bring it up, and I'm just wondering, is it worth it for each school, like let's say 3 different schools have esports? Is it not better for us just to put in procedures for esports at our division schools as opposed to have each school create their own procedures around it? that would be my question. It would seem easier if the division just did it for, and whatever, whether they have chess clubs here or whether they have whatever the thing may be, it seems like it might be easier for the division to have that on file as opposed to every single school writing their own procedures.
And I think the schools do work together. For example, esports, I think, is by the vice principal and the coach, right? And so that would apply to all those students in that activity. But that's a really complex and important question that I don't know the entire answer to that. I think that all schools have sort of your participation procedures that follow all activities, and some have things specific to the sport. But I think our first step now would be assess where are we at with that and what. I'm always a little reluctant to have the jurisdiction assume responsibility for writing procedures for school-based activity, but I think there's something to be said for coordinating, sharing, and organizing of all of those things. Sure.
Need to use.
Yeah, they use a lot of that. They follow the ESWE handbook for a lot of stuff, but that's a question.
Jenny?
Oh, I just was gonna say, my experience with my kids has been what Cheryl is suggesting it might be, is it has been, each sport has been home. Like, if my daughter's in rugby, she brought home the code of conduct procedures. And I think that maybe some of them seem specific to her school of like, this is our procedure with our equipment specifically. And so I could see how making it standardized might interfere with them being able to individualize it to their own processes at their own school.
Craig?
Plus, by putting this under as a procedure, it allows that flexibility that it doesn't have to come to the board all the time, but that administration working with schools to develop a very good procedure that works for both the division and the schools.
Any other questions or comments? So we will need a motion, Craig, to rescind policy 503.
Well, I'll make the first motion is that we, for policy 503.5, we accept the amended version, first of all, and vote on that part.
We're rescinding it.
You don't need to if you're gonna rescind it.
Okay.
Because once it becomes a procedure, they can just make these changes.
Okay. So I would move that we, for policy 503.5 student activities, that we rescind it as a policy and to move it to the procedures.
Christina?
What policy is it called? Are they procedures attached to a policy?
Well, it'll just be a procedure under 500. Well, it would be.
I was just clarifying because there was another motion later in the package that you had like specifically mentioned which.
Well, it'll probably be procedure 503.5 as far as I can, because it'll come under that 500 series, unless I'm mistaken.
We probably like let decide that.
But it would be up to administration as to where to put it. It's just, we want to move it to procedure for policy.
It would fall under policy.
I think it's wise to keep it as a division procedure. Now there's, and I guess there's one other way of approaching this. I know that as the board works its way and then the policy committee works its way through all of the policies that are coming before it this year, and as the board reviews 100s and 200s, recommendations are made as to whether it should be a policy procedure. But that could be where that recommendation is on record for it to be placed as a procedure when the policies are restructured. So you could, for example, one possibility is making the changes to this as a policy and keeping on, and then a second motion to put on record that the recommendation is to move this policy to a procedure when board policies are reorganized. Does that make sense?
So recommendation from Christine Lee is that refer it to administration, because also under that 503.5A is a code of ethics and code of conduct for student activities. So they'll be able to bundle it and go from there. So, but if we rescind it as a policy, then administration can figure out where it's going to go. Okay. So the motion on the floor is to rescind policy 503.5, student activities, to move it to procedure. Are there any further questions or comments? We're going to, administration will decide where it's going to go after we move it to procedures. Yeah. Any further questions? Those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, the next one is policy 607.3. The blue has been added, and prescribing resources that deal primarily and explicitly with religion or human sexuality must follow appropriate notice to parents, guardians, as outlined in section 58.1 of the Education Act. So it just puts the policy in sync with the Education Act. But my motion will be, it was recommended to the board to be removed as a policy and changed to procedure under 500.1 student rights and responsibilities. So I will make that motion and then we can discuss it. I move that policy 607.3 be rescinded as a policy and changed to a procedure under 500.1 student rights and responsibilities.
Christina?
Yeah, I'd like to have a conversation about it, because I think ensuring that students have appropriate materials is a big responsibility of governance. And I think specifically because it does mention a number of pieces here that are sort of like public issues, I guess. Like I do have a question about the removal, and this might be like an Education Act piece that I wasn't aware of, is the removal of the line, all resources and materials must comply with the recognizing diversity and promoting respect standards available in education, while then simultaneously adding additional pieces from the Education Act. So I just want to have a conversation. I would personally, at this time, until we hear more information, would like to keep those policies in the court obligation.
And I think knowing, like in reading the memo that was attached to this, I don't know that we were given much notification that it was, I don't see that the recommendation was for it to go to procedures, unless I'm missing that. Because I see in the recommendation that it's to adopt the revisions of the policies as presented.
We did discuss it at the policy meeting, and so if you look at the policy advisory committee report, that's where you'll see some of the recommendations. But it was decided with everybody that was at the meeting that this is really where it should be, is because the Education Act can change and regulations in the education can change on certain things that are allowed in instructional resources and materials. And to have it come back to the board every time would hamstring the administration in some way, and also we'd have to take it to the policy committee, then send it out to everybody, and then bring it back and do it. And when the Education Act is changed, basically we have to follow it. So I think the feeling of the committee was that this really does belong as a procedure, because the regulations can change, the Education Act can change, and we have to comply. So I think that was the philosophy that was behind it as a recommendation.
For me, looking at it with the lens of it being removed as a policy, and I look at regulations number 2, students shall not be denied basic instructional supplies and materials because of financial hardship. To me, that's governance, that's policy. So I'm really, really struggling that this is, and I know we're just being notified of that now for it to be moved to procedure, but haven't had an opportunity to wrap my head around moving it to procedure. When I look at this initially, it concerns me to think we're going to move it to procedure and not keep it as policy. So I saw somebody on this side have their hand up. Jenny, go ahead.
I just would like to share that same notion that Allison and Christina have shared as well, that this reads to me as governance responsibilities and directly related to some of the obligations that are outlined in the Education Act for us as a board. And so until I have further understanding that changes my mind, otherwise I would be keeping it as policy.
Christina?
Yeah, and then I found my note about the recognizing diversity. So that document was pulled and I forgot about that. So I recognize taking that out. That document doesn't exist, I guess, on that. Yeah. I found my note on my stickies. But I think, because I would agree, actually, that I find policy stronger when they can stand the test of changing political documents. Because I don't want to have to go back and take out documents that have been pulled off the website, or, but simultaneously, like, adding in section 58.1 of the Education Act, I think is contrary to that effort. I think either we agree to say it aligns with the Education Act, please refer to it, or we don't. Like, I think adding in 50, like that specific point of 5 prescribing resources to that is contrary to that effort. That's the way. Sure.
Yeah, that addition doesn't necessarily align with the spirit of the document. That was something that came from the recommendation of one of the stakeholders around the table. And that piece is in the Education Act. I mean, to reiterate it or state it here isn't necessarily necessary, but that would be for the board to decide, of course, whether that they felt that was necessary or not, because that's part of what guides instructional practice and resource allocations in schools. And all teachers are very aware of that piece of the Education Act, and that would be for the board to decide whether that makes sense in this piece or not. It is already stated in another policy in the human sexuality policy. There's another policy that guides that under students already, that is already stated in there. Instruction of religious instruction and some policy that guides instruction of religion and or matters of human sexuality.
I'm going to take 30 seconds just to recognize it's 5 o'clock. Just going to check with Garrett and Christy. Is there anybody waiting for public forum? Okay. And if there is in the next few minutes, just let us know. Are you wanting public forum?
Yeah.
Perfect. If you can come join us out at the front. Thank you for joining us for public forum. So public forum is, you do have 5 minutes to be able to share your information that you would like to with us. And again, it's an opportunity for you to share with the board and for us to use that information going forward when we're making decisions. And we'll ask any clarifying questions, but we won't be engaging in dialogue. Thank you, Nicole.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I know you're keeping sick of me talking, but it's a 2-for-1. So, anyways, so there is a policy that we have that wellness in schools, and number 6 is spirituality. And I know that's for schools, but this is a school meeting. So just what I'm going to talk about, I just wanted to share it as a Christian, from my perspective and my faith. And again, I'm not representing my school, their views or speaking on their behalf at all. So, and this is the one I was really nervous about, but anyways. So I'd like to start with something that I think we can all agree on. The world is broken and it isn't as it should be. To grasp the magnitude of what is wrong with everyone and everything in our world, we must understand the magnitude of sin. The fundamental problem of the human race lies not outside of man, like the anti-racism, anti-oppression policy asserts, by employing the ideological framework that says we live in a majority culture that privileges the dominant race, that racism is ubiquitous, everywhere and everything. This presupposition is one of the foundational core tenets of critical race theory. The fundamental problem of the human race is inside of man. What is sin? Sin is any lack of conformity to the holiness of God. Sin is any transgression of the law of God. Sin is going astray from the will of God. This is man's greatest problem, not white supremacy and not conscious and unconscious racism. The Apostle Paul says in Romans 3 verse 23, for all have sinned. This means apart from Jesus, every person in every place, in every generation has sinned. Further, Romans 6 verse 23 says, the wages of sin is death. This death sentence hangs over the entire human race. The entire human race is perishing. The entire human race is on a broad path headed for destruction. The entire human race is rightly and justly the object of God's holy wrath. This is the devastating state of the human race and condition of the fallen world in which we live. Is there any hope? Yes, there is. God had a plan. He sent his son Jesus. Jesus, in his sinless life and his substitutionary death on the cross, Jesus Christ satisfied the vengeance of God toward those whom he died, his people. Further, with that death, he set us free from the tyranny of sin. He established peace between God and those whom he died. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from our unrighteousness. The Bible teaches us how to live in right relationship with God and with each other. The Bible teaches us that every person is an image bearer, made in the likeness of God. We are all unique, and God has blessed each one of us with different talents, gifts, and abilities. Each person has intrinsic value. The ARAO policy has been added to the educational philosophy section in the division's policies. As I understand it, educational philosophy affects how children are taught. Philosophy has to do with truth and how we perceive the world. I'm gravely concerned with what is being acknowledged as excellence and who is being celebrated and looked to for advice when it comes to drafting the procedures for the anti-racism policy and educating our children on racism. Liz Kleinrock posted on her Instagram that policing is an invention of white supremacy culture. Anyone can be complicit. We are not meant to live like this. Dr. Farah Sharif asserts that racism is everywhere in everything. She thinks that canceling people who do not share this worldview is the right thing to do. She also tells people to read books by Robin DiAngelo, who has recently started telling people of color to get away from white people and have some community with each other, affinity spaces. Robin wants to create a culture that spits out the people who are resistant to the ideology. Anti-racism educators believe that the world will teach our kids only to see and look for what is negative in Black, Indigenous, and people of color. If we educate a generation of children to believe that they are products of a socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges people who identify as white, so you either get labeled as oppressor or oppressed, what will the future look like? If we look back in history, whenever we divide and label people, very bad things happen. I guess I'll just end with, I don't think the entire system is racist, but I do agree that there are still racists in the system, and they need to be confronted one at a time instead of tearing down the whole system.
Thank you, Nicole. You did well if you were nervous. Are there any clarifying questions? Jenny?
If there was information you didn't have the opportunity to share, can you email it to us? Can you invite you to email it to us if you didn't have time to share it with us? Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. And now we'll move on back to where we were. I think that Andrea was going to ask a question.
Craig, could you give an example of when the Education Act changes that would be not in our best interest to have this as a policy?
Well, I don't have an example, but I do know that as the government came in and said, this is the new Education Act, these are the things you have to abide by. If we have policies that are contrary to that, we would have to go through each policy and correct them. And then under our system as it is today, we would have to send those, we would have to discuss those with the policy committee, and then they would go out to all the stakeholders, and then they would come back and be discussed as a policy committee, and then come back to the board. So I'm just saying that it might be, and I don't know how governments would look at it, but if they change something, it could be a possible 2 to 3 months before we could change policy. And so that's one of the things that we struggled with. I might add, though, number 5 was brought up because of parental concerns, and that sometimes it appears, and I will not answer whether we did or not, that some of the teachers do not follow what's in the Education Act. That was the concern brought forward to the committee, and that's why that was put in there. And we did not talk about where or when or who. It's just that there was a feeling that sometimes teachers don't understand what's in the Education Act. Therefore, the parent that brought this forward was feeling very strongly that there should be some parental protection, and that's why that was put in. And I understand, and I agree with Cheryl, that it is in the Education Act. I guess my concern that was raised was that she felt that some teachers don't follow the Education Act as prescribed. Now, I can't answer yes or no to that. That wasn't discussed as a policy. It was just, that's what her feelings were.
Cheryl and Kristen. And I guess the question becomes, how do you manage with someone if you feel that someone hasn't followed what's in the school act? So do you put it in a resources procedure, or is that something that would go through a different mechanism, right? So if someone doesn't follow something that's in the Education Act or under the Teaching Profession Act or under whatever that may be, that doesn't necessarily mean that you put it under procedure with that. I guess that's would be my lens, is because if someone feels that someone wasn't attending to that section of the Education Act, then that's a conduct issue. It's not instructional resources and materials piece. That would just be my, like, we're really mixing two avenues of understanding and recourse here, I guess. So if someone hasn't done that, then that is a conduct issue, as opposed to it being pursued under an instructional resources procedure policy. That would just be my lens on that.
Christina?
Yeah, and I would just agree. So 602.7 is the sexuality instruction policy that it does explicitly mention that piece. And I think so. Yeah, and so I would just say, like, I don't know that adding it again to another policy reinforces that any more than we already have the tools to do so. I recognize that it was a parent concern, so I appreciate that that was brought forward for the committee. And I think I would feel more comfortable just reassuring that person on behalf of the board that I personally would suggest that we feel confident that it's addressed in those additional policies and we can point to those. And I think in terms of updating policies when things change, I think that's kind of just how it goes. Because I know often we get these policies from policy review that are simply updating, like, the name of our division at this point, and the Education Act or the School Act, right? And so I think that's kind of just how it has to go.
Jenny and Jennifer.
to have this listed only under our human sexuality policy, we're failing to recognize the piece of this that is speaking explicitly with religion. And so, because this is a policy about resources, I think it's appropriate to say this is about resources and the way that we're allocating them to our students, and if there's complaints about them, how you should handle that. Hopefully authorize instructional resources, retrieval resources and materials. So this specifically is speaking about if any of these resources are explicitly with a religious or human sexual nature, then this is what we follow. So I think it's appropriate. I think it's important to recognize that this is speaking not just to materials of a nature that address human sexuality, but also those that explicitly address religion. Right.
So what I'm getting a feel for is that I might rescind the proposed motion and say that it should go back to policy committee to discuss it, and maybe during that discussion we can we can see if it coordinates with the policy 602, whatever. But I would rescind the motion and just say that we'll defer it back to the policy committee if that's the case. I'm getting the feeling that some of the board members are uncomfortable, and I would rather have that discussion go back to policy so that we can further figure out where we should go with this. That's okay. Board.
And Christina has some comments. And just for me, I think if you can bring forward, if the recommendation is for it to go to procedure, that we have rationale for why to go to procedure.
Certainly.
So Christina and then Christine.
Yeah, and I would just, as a recommendation, so what did you say? 602.7 is human sexuality, 602.8 is the religious instruction. Maybe we could reference those in the division policy reference section at the bottom to help folks recognize, because I completely understand that is a big concern for a lot of parents, and parents do bring that up quite a bit. And so I think it's well covered in our policies, and if we added that reference, then it would point to that, right? Because I hear you, Jenny, saying that piece, the 0.7 only is about the human sexuality, but 0.8 is about religious instruction. So I think if we mention it there, it's an acknowledgement of the concern that was brought forward. So.
And we'll finish off with Christine.
This might be dipping my toes into operations, but perspective, my question would be what constitutes appropriate notice, and just having that conversation. Because I know when we register, I just registered two of my children, and the human sexuality piece was in my registration packet. So is that a loan notification, or is there a further notification that parents would want? Just putting that out there for conversation as to the when that would happen, so that parents know when to have those follow-up and concurrent conversations. So I'm just adding that.
Maureen has a comment thought.
Okay, can I just ask a quick question? Yeah, okay. And then my second question would be to Craig. Has the committee sought legal guidance as to what would be appropriate to move to keep as policy, just for risk management's sake for our division as we move forward?
Mark? Just the first question. So within the package, there is that information, and then there's notification from the school when they start.
And Craig, I'll just get you a wrap up on that one. You're good? Taking it back to the committee?
I'll take it back to the committee. I'll consider your comments about legal. And I would just say that this reason wasn't maybe because of the actual course, but it might be something that happened in the classroom.
Great. Thank you, Craig.
Okay.
One more?
Yeah, one more. Policy 502.3, suspensions and expulsions. It was unclear at the last meeting. So number one, the yellow highlights in this draft indicate direct wording from the Education Act. So we're taking it right from the Education Act. The only change, and this came back, the committee brought this back, is on 502 under 1.2.5, the blue. And one of the things that was brought up by administrator is that they don't want to discuss the reasonableness of a suspension or an expulsion. They want to discuss the circumstances, which is completely different than reasonableness. And that's why that was added. Everything else, the yellow again is what comes out of the act. The red is what we've changed a little bit. And appointed by the board, 2 trustees appointed by the board is needed. And if you go through, then it's just a matter of adding the references. And also we added, because some students are independent, we had to add the independence. So I move that board accept policy 502.3, suspensions and expulsions as amended.
No further questions or comments? Go ahead, Tyler.
Under, I guess the first part, under policy number 5, I feel like there needs to be something else there, but I'm not sure what the wording is. Under the intimate image, there are other images that can be very detrimental to people that aren't necessarily intimate. That gets sent out, whether they, regardless of what someone's up to with questionable behavior, whatever. And I think that needs to be protected as well.
That's education and terminology.
It might be, but then the Education Act, in my mind, is missing more than what's intimate, because to me, there's a lot more things than that out there, where people can start posting things about you that aren't necessarily intimate, but are very damaging. But I don't know exactly how to word that.
Yeah, intimate in the dreams, they have to go
online.
Look at section 111 of Education Act. More than
So under 1.1, intimate image means an intimate image as defined in the Protecting Victims of Non-Consensual Distribution of Intimate Images Act.
That really helped.
That did help. Really, that's clear now.
It's fine for now, I'm just throwing that out there. There's a lot more things than just something intimate, right?
Okay, sure.
You take a stand-up comedian, you have, let's say you have a kid who's doing a stand-up comedy act, and you take something that person said out of context of what was going on, and then start distributing it around. That's a real problem. There's nothing intimate in it, but there's a lot of ramifications that can come from that. So just off the wall example.
Cheryl, Craig.
Just a thought, because I think I understand what you're saying, because that is becoming more common. So, I mean, just because it's from the Education Act doesn't mean we can't act to it, as Charlie suggests. So, the student has distributed an intimate image or image that seriously damages, that causes serious reputational damage. Is that the same?
Embarrassing, intellectual harassment, degrading, or otherwise hurts that person.
It's included in the
Oh, it's already in the intimate, okay.
That's fine, that's how it's defined.
Because I think it means beyond sexual. I think that intimate means beyond.
What is that for?
That's right.
Justice.gc.ca under non-consensual distribution of intimate images. If you read through the introduction, near the end of the introduction, it talks about it specifically. The effect of this distribution is violation of the convicted person's privacy in relation to images, distribution of which is likely to be embarrassing, humiliating, harassing, degrading. Extent of non-consensual distribution of intimate images. goes on. I think the piece that this is connected to is the criminal act, right? And so when we talk about working with police, for example, someone shares an image of a student, not necessarily in a sexual nature, at what point does it become criminal? And so the term harassment then becomes part of the conversation, right, Tyler? And that is included within the definition of this.
Craig and then Christina.
I'm just wondering, as Tyler was talking, we want to make sure that our staff is protected too, and that they're safe. Now, does that include staff? Would you say, if you read that, would that include someone taking a video of a teacher in school? That would,
specific guidelines.
and so that would still be means for if you publish it or she publishes it, that could be. Yeah.
Because it says people of others in the school, of another person.
Okay,
It
good.
doesn't just say students.
All right, so just so that we know that we're protecting everyone.
And that's justice.
Christina, you're good? No further comments or questions? Craig has a motion. And do you want to make a motion?
I move that we take policy 502.3 and approve it as amended.
Those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Craig. And next, we're on to board budget.
Okay, so in your package, you have the revised 2023-2024 Board of Trustees belief statements for preparation of budget. When we were at your strategic planning session at the beginning of the month, you reviewed the belief statements, and we made a couple adjustments. So the first adjustment is we've added the good work you did at the strategic plan by listing the board values, because I think they're very important to the belief system, and then also the board priorities that you established for 2024, and they're at the bottom because we reference them. The one change, a significant change you made was in bullet 4. The board, and this is new, the board believes in collaboration with municipalities, other boards, and community-based service agencies to effectively address the needs of all students, which promotes the efficient use of public resources. So that's drawing that linkage to, it's a partnership, we need support from everybody in order to support our students. And then they made a change to the bottom one that says board believes in providing target opportunities for further board priorities within the schools. And that's what we have board priorities for. Does this represent what we discussed, or would you like a change?
Heather.
I've got my glasses on, so I think I may be right. So bullet 4, I think the first line has a different font size than the second and third. Take that up. I got my glasses on today.
Look at that.
Okay.
Other than font size.
Other than fonts, are you okay with your board beliefs?
Okay, Craig.
Yeah, I might just want.
No, if you're okay with it.
When I read it, I very much appreciated seeing our new board values and our board priorities listed there. So Christina's looking like she wants to make that motion for us.
I move that the board accept the Board of Trustees belief statements as presented.
Thank you. And those in favor? And that's carried. And next is capital plan.
Okay, thank you very much. So the 24-26 draft capital plan was presented to the facilities committee. And I have a video here. Kristen, if you can roll the video will be, I'm not going to present to you, but the video is going to present to you. So I hope the voice is a nice soft voice.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the presentation of the Lethbridge School Division 3-year capital plan for the years 2023, 2025, 2026. Before we begin, we'd like to begin this presentation by acknowledging we're all on lands of the Treaty 7 First Nations. We acknowledge the many First Nations peoples whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. why do school divisions submit a capital plan? Well, school divisions are required to submit a 3-year capital plan to Alberta Education by April 1st of each year. School divisions will review their facility needs and will determine if a new school is needed to address enrollment pressures, or if a modernization is required to existing schools to modernize learning environments, functionality, programming, improve building conditions, address enrollment pressures, or address health and safety concerns. School divisions will look at their facility needs and then rank those projects by priority. Alberta Education will then take all that information into consideration when they are granting funding for those projects. Lethbridge School Division has 21 facilities that we manage. 13 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 4 high schools. Lethbridge School Division also has 3 Christian schools. 4 of those facilities are owned and operated by their societies. Of our 21 schools, 52% or 11 schools are between the ages of 51 to 80 years old. And of course, we have one school at 111 years old, and that is Galvin Elementary. On this chart to the right, you can see that 1950 and 1960 were big building years, with 10 of our schools built in that era. We then started building a few more in 1980 with 3 schools, and then it's been a steady growth through the decades of 1990 and 2000, with 3 schools being built in 2010, and then again, our next decade's been a little slower for the growth. The school division determines when to ask for a new school. We look at the pace of development within the city, and this development will influence enrollment that will happen in the city of Lethbridge and the particular pressures that it might place on existing schools. You can see on the left-hand side the future land development map of the city of Lethbridge. All the yellow areas are future land development. From this map, you can see that West Lethbridge has the most planned future growth. Currently, in West Lethbridge, our space utilization in West Lethbridge is very high, and so that influences where we will need a new school. Student demographics is one of the most important factors that we look at in determining if we need a new school or if we need to address other concerns related to facilities. As you can see on this chart, the Lethbridge School Division will experience steady growth from 2023 through 2026. These enrollment projections are believed to be on the conservative side due to unknown impacts of migration and housing developments, given the current economic climate. We're projecting about a 1.3% increase from 2023 to 2024, and another 2% in 2024 and 2025. However, we'd like to note that Statistics Canada, Canadian Municipal Area Population Counts in July 2022, reported that the Canadian municipal area for the Lethbridge region was 133,000. This was an increase of almost 3,000 people, or 2.3% per year. We know that there's significant economic development that is occurring in and around Lethbridge, and with this latest data, we feel that our enrollment might be even greater than what we're projecting here. This particular chart shows student enrollment by school type. We like to pay attention to where the growth is at elementary, middle school, and high school when we're doing our capital planning. As you can see from this chart, the most significant growth we'll see over a capital planning period is at high school. High school will experience an 11.73% increase. Elementary will stay stable, and middle school will have an increase, although not as significant as high school. From this chart, you can see that we've also outlined where the growth will be in our city by sector: South Lethbridge, North Lethbridge, and West Lethbridge. And no surprise here, West Lethbridge will be the fastest growing sector of our city at 10.64% over our planning period. What's important to note is that we have 7 schools that have core utilization over 100%. So it's really important that we take a look at where our enrollment is growing in the future and what can we do to address those enrollment pressures. This chart is an interesting chart because it shows the amount of time from when we first request a capital project to the time it may be approved for funding by Alberta Education. So if you take a look at our recent new school builds, for instance, Coalbanks Elementary, it was first requested in 2006 and it was approved for funding in 2014 and we happily opened it in August of 2017. And our latest school, West Lethbridge Elementary School in Garry Station, we first requested it in 2008. It was finally approved 13 years later in 2021, and it is scheduled to open in September 2025. So as they say, at first you don't succeed, you trying again, and as you can see, we try and we keep trying until we have a project funded. This chart illustrates a new path to project funding that has been announced by the province of Alberta in budget 2023. The province has announced a 4-stage process to full funding of a capital project. I'd just like to show you how one of our projects sits on this funding schedule. Back in 2021, Galbraith Elementary School received pre-planning funds from Alberta Education. This funding was received for us to provide engagement with our school community and do some visioning and outline some of the options that we could take to modernize Galbraith Elementary School. In budget 2023, planning funds have been provided for Galbraith Elementary School modernization. This allows us to further along the path to full funding by taking the opportunity to analyze some of the work that we did in the pre-planning stage and move along to pre-design of the project. We're hoping that we'll move along a little quicker, so where we are now, to full funding and construction in a few years. So now that we've talked about new drivers for new projects, what it takes to get funded for a project, let's talk about our #1 project for a new school build, and that would be a new K-5 elementary in the south end of West Lethbridge. We are seeing, based on the future growth patterns in West Lethbridge, utilization at our 2 elementary schools in that end of the West Lethbridge, Coalbanks Elementary and Dr. Proby Elementary, that there is a need for an additional school to accommodate that enrollment growth pressures. Coalbanks currently has a capacity of 107%, and Dr. Proby has 73% capacity, with growth continuing in that community. Each school has 13 modular classrooms each, as we've been adding on as we've needed to address enrollment pressures. This year, Coalbanks will have 1 new classroom that will be added on to that school, and we have requested 4 more modular classrooms that will add 100 additional spaces if approved by the province. As you can see, Coalbanks continues to grow and is seeing those enrollment pressures. The need for a new elementary school in that south end continues to be a #1 top priority. The plan is that school would likely go in the community of Watermark, although we do not have a school site earmarked yet. There is a school site in the long-term development plan with the city of Lethbridge. This new school has been on our capital plan since 2008. A new item in our capital plan this year is a planning funds request that the division has made to Alberta Education to fund a study of West Lethbridge. This study is needed because West Lethbridge has become a very unique and complicated puzzle. With all the continued enrollment growth in West West Lethbridge. There's a lot of challenges that need to be analyzed. There's also currently 3 out of 4 elementary schools that require a modernization. And when we look at all the modular classrooms that have placed on our schools in West Lethbridge to address that growing community over the past number of years, there is the equivalent of 1,625 elementary student spaces. This would equate to 3 elementary schools that would hold 600 students each. The West Side study would also give us the opportunity to explore opportunities for addressing that space, addressing future space, maybe exploring partnerships with our sister school division here in Lethbridge, Holy Spirit, other partnerships, or maybe daycare spaces or other recreational spaces of need. Work with the city of Lethbridge. There's all kinds of opportunities when we do this study. And so we're hoping to have approval for funding for the study that will take place this year. This infographic illustrates our new school construction. We just completed Dr. Robert Plaxton in 2021, and in 2021 we were approved for the West Lethbridge Elementary School that will reside in Gary Station. It begins construction this year and to be completed for September 2025. And now we're continuing to request a new West Lethbridge Elementary School in the south end of West Lethbridge with an estimated cost of $31 million. So let's turn to now school modernizations. There are 9 schools requested for modernization in our capital plan. The drivers that we consider when we're looking at a modernization include health and safety measures, building condition, ability to deliver today's programs, utilization of that school space, and infrastructure performance. Galbraith Elementary, as explained before, is our #1 project for modernization in our capital plan. Galbraith is 111 years old and is the oldest school in our division. We were fortunate, as explained before, to receive planning funds in 2021 and were able to conduct a visioning session in May of 2022. And of course this year, in February 2023, we've been announced that we'll receive school planning funds, and this will help us move along on our plan to modernize Galbraith with the hopes of being funded in the next year or 2 to actually conduct some construction. This graphic here shows our 9 schools that we have on our list for modernization, and of course further details on those modernizations and why they need modernization. Please see a more detailed capital plan on the website. You can see, of course, Galbraith is #1. What is new in this plan is that we've added LCI for a major modernization. It will be about a $40 million modernization on this LCI with the movement of students from West Lethbridge to alleviate pressure from Chinook High School. Is seeing significant enrollment pressure in that school with new contemporary learning needs. There is a need to refresh and modernize that school to address the many opportunities that we can provide to our high school students. This slide is an overview of all our projects. We have 10 projects on our capital plan, 1 new school, and 9 modernizations. It is an ambitious list, but it outlines the facility needs of Lethbridge School Division, particularly with our growth and some of the age of our facilities. This concludes the presentation of our 3-year capital plan. For more information about our capital plan, please see our 134-page detailed document on the division website. This document will provide detailed information related to division demographics, growth, school enrollment, community profiles, as well as details of our plan modernizations. If you want to see details about our requested projects in the plan, they begin on page 40. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Now that we've had you written down, are there any questions? Great.
Just on the projections, high school's gonna have almost a 12% increase, but the other schools aren't. So wouldn't that other schools be similar to what kind of increase we would have in high school? Or does that mean that we're starting to see a lower number of elementary school students coming in? Typically.
So there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, we've had a bubble that's moved from the elementary, middle school, going into high school. So there's that bubble that's moving through. Because of COVID, there was actually reduced, not necessarily COVID, but prior to COVID, there was reduced birth rates. So we're seeing lower kindergarten students because of birth rates. However, that sometimes gets offset with migration, with people moving from Ontario, Quebec, BC for jobs in this area. We see that offset with new immigrants coming in and settling in Lethbridge. And those aren't always predictable when we run our demographics. So I'll give you an example. So Berger Demographics is a program we use. They look at our current enrollment that we've put into the system as of September 30th. They look at birth trends. They kind of do a mapping of move in, move out. They take a look at our history with regards to migration, but that can change on a dime, right? Depending on what's going on in the world. So right now we have this uncertainty with the economic climate that we're in. However, we're seeing lots of announcements for new economic growth in this region. We just talked about the new expansion with the Kings that's coming through. That could have an impact on us, probably more in Palliser region, but it may have an impact on us. So if there's other industries going on, we're seeing an influx of immigrants coming, refugees, that sort of thing. Those aren't all predictable when we do that. So we do our best to try and predict out the future. So I think these numbers are a little bit conservative in the elementary area, and I think we'll see that increase. I've done for my best projections of trying to figure out where new housing is going, and I've actually adjusted Berger to increase numbers based on what I can see. But it's really hard to tell. We have a census this year from the city. We'll be able to send that information to Berger, and I can update that information. Census information is really important for helping us for what we call local knowledge. Because Berger doesn't always have local knowledge. So but we do know the high school bubble. Sorry, long answer, but I wanted to give you full context of the difficulties it is in projecting our enrollments going forward. But we do have a bubble that's impacting high school. That's real.
Okay, thanks.
Andrew?
Thank you for that report. It was great. I wanted to know. Can't read my writing here. I wanted to say thank you for the cool idea of studying at Lethbridge. I think that's a very novel and wonderful thing to do for our city. And in naming a new school, do you wait until the school is totally built, or how does that process happen?
I'll start the answer, but Cheryl's usually more the expert on that. We'll start naming the school usually a year out. We go through a process. The board has a process they can get feedback and ideas, and then the board votes on a new name. Jeremy?
I have two questions. One is that presentation on our website?
It will be once the plan is approved. I've got the documents on there, but once you approve the plan.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try and put it up on the assistance.
No, it's great. It's so easily understood that it explains, I think, a lot. Really great resource. And then my other question was to that study as well. I didn't catch, is the division doing the study or is the city doing the study?
We've put in a request for Alberta Education to fund the division to take the lead on the study. So I'm hoping any day now we get a letter on modulars and on that study. And if it's approved, then We will hire a consultant. We'll also, Boy Square is very interested in the study that we're doing, so we'll involve them. And we'll need to probably involve the city regarding development, and maybe there's some partnership opportunities that a consultant and the city can do.
So I'm just looking for a motion to accept the 2024 to 2026 capital plan as presented.
I move that the board accept the 2024, 2026 capital plan as presented.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, those in favor? And that's carried. Next, we'll move on to 9.6, board school liaisons, and that's great.
Yes. I know our executive assistant changes the school liaisons each year. I would just like to make a slight adaptation to the school liaison. I find it's hard to really develop a relationship in the school while we're being there for 1 year. Secondly, because we have an odd number of trustees, and some have 4 schools and others have 3, the school liaison for 4 schools should be rotated among the trustees so that it evens out our yearly workload. And that before we assign school liaison, I think it would be possible that our trustees could send it into our executive assistant if they'd like to keep 1, 2, or 3 schools. And the other schools are then divided amongst the trustees. And that we choose 2 different trustees each year for the 4 schools. I will, if you want me to make a recommendation for a motion, then we can discuss it. I think it should be 2 different motions, personally. So, on the first one, I move that by the April board meeting, if a trustee would like to keep the same school liaison, they may so request it.
So we'll open up to discussion. Cheryl has printed the assignments for the last 2 years, so she'll find those.
Right, I'll some talk with this item. So what I've got is just 2 documents for you that I didn't put together first, but Kristen, thank you, put together. And one is the sort of what this year meeting dates and stuff are, because I know that is something, but that doesn't mean that's the same next year, but these are this year, the dates and times, as well as your liaisons for last year, this year.
So Cheryl just found that out for, so you have it for information as we're discussing. Thanks. I don't see everybody jumping for discussion. One piece that for me, and I know in talking to some trustees, they're not necessarily wanting to, not that they don't want to stay, but they want to be able to have an opportunity to meet more schools within our 4 years that we are elected for. One thing that I would like to see different is that it's typically at our May meeting that we approve the list. And what I would like to see is that on our May committee of the whole, that we have our executive assistant bring forward the suggested list and the the dates that our school councils currently meet, so that we can look at our calendars and it's not that we're at our board meeting in May trying to negotiate and change around, and we've had the opportunity to look at those schedules, because some of us have kids or other obligations that are on certain nights and it might not work if you have different things going on. So it just makes our board meeting time more efficient, and it allows us to have that opportunity ahead of time to look at making those changes. So that would be my recommendation, is that, I know we have a motion before, but is that we look at these ahead of time at the May committee of the whole, so we're prepared for that meeting if we do want to make any changes. Tyler's hand is up.
Okay, this is the, I don't know, minimum 3rd time with this. Maybe 4, I'm losing track. So I'm going to stand by the way I've been every single other time on it, and for to say that I much prefer that we rotate through the schools during the course of a term. It takes 4 years to get around all the schools, and I like to make sure I get there. If you want to switch with someone who has it, you always have the opportunity to try and switch with someone. But I personally, like, if someone chooses, if somebody has, whatever, has Vic Park this year and they want to keep it next year, that means someone else isn't going to get a chance in their term to go to Vic Park. So that's the part, I get where you're coming from, why you want to do that, but I'm the opposite side of it where I want to get out and be able to be around all of them. So that's the part I'm going to stick on, so I would be going against this motion.
I appreciate kind of the desire to build that relationship. I think it's important to be affirmed that just because it's not your liaison school, you can't build a relationship with that school. I'm in my 6th year and there's still one school I haven't been to, right? And I think for us to do our jobs well, we need to be able to connect with each school and learn each school and get to know the staff and see the broader picture. And I think to do that well, we do need to be matched with new schools every year, because for us to step into schools that aren't our liaison schools, it's doable, but it's a little trickier. And so I would not be supportive of that, but I definitely think there's room for conversation between trustees. I don't think it needs to be a motion to make it happen. I would like to think that we can have legit conversation.
And I see it as, like, last year there was still with COVID interruptions, as well as there was other applications that we had in some of my first year schools. I didn't necessarily have the same time to have those relationships that I do the second year. And I know that any of my schools from last year, if I called them up and said, hey, can I come and have a visit, or I'd like to come to one of your events, I know that they would welcome me, right? And I know that they would welcome me back, and those relationships are important. And I think that all of our schools are very welcoming to our trustees. They want notice, of course, but I think anybody would. But I've had no issue with having that welcoming arms to come and say hi. Any other comments, Andrea?
I'd love to be a liaison for all of my schools, and I do get attached to them. I would like to keep rotating just because I'd like to get to my children's schools.
And I think this is just from the other side. I think the optics from the school system is they'd love to meet all of you, right? And I think for them to connect and build relationships with each of you is really valuable. Not that that doesn't happen if you stay at one school, but I just think from principals, they like to get to know each and every one of you, and that's an opportunity for them to connect.
Jenny?
There might be a school that might want to get rid of me, so we should give them a chance.
Really have 3 to 4 depending on.
There you go.
Looking for someone who.
So there is a motion on the floor that by the April board meeting, the trustee would like to keep the same liaison. They may so request it. That's the motion on the floor. Those in favor? Those opposed? And that's great.
The second part is that I noticed, I think the last 2 years, the same 2 trustees had 4 schools each, and the others had 3. And to really even out the workload, it should be given to 2 different trustees each year to have 4 schools. So I move that 2 different trustees are given 4 schools each year instead of 3 each year.
Tyler?
No, it's here, but I'm pretty positive last year I had 4 schools and this year I had 3. So I think it does move around, whether or not something didn't happen that way, but I had 4, I might have had 4 2 years in a row from the last term, first and 2, but I don't know. But pretty positive I had 4 last year and I had 3 this year. Yeah.
Any other comments? Okay, and that motion is on the floor. Those in favor? The motion is on the floor that the 2 different trustees are given 4 schools instead of 3 each year. Okay, and that's carried. And then if everybody is good, we don't need to have a motion on it, but then at the May committee of the whole, we'll have Kristen bring forward the proposed list along with the dates so that we can do any swapping that we need to. Bring your calendars for that so that we're prepared if there's any changes for the May to get on the road even.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I move that we extend the testing supply.
Thank you. Those in favor? And that's carried. And next is Safe Routes to School.
Okay. At our last meeting, Christine Lee brought up the fact that we were having some safety issues around buses unloading and loading in schools and people between buses and jaywalking. And as a parent, back in the 2000s, I know that we used to have safety patrols in some of our schools, which made it very safe for kids to cross the road and keep parents from jaywalking and also keeping buses from having things. So what I've done is I've picked up, we've got some things to put up on thing from the Transportation Safety Planning Report of 2020, which is Strategy 4.1 Young Users, and Kristen could show that to us. And I think there's also another one where I included a report, a couple of news articles about the impact of safety patrols. This was done by the city in 2020. There was, from what I gather, the Holy Spirit, Lethbridge Public, the city police, and EMA were involved, and they came up with implementing safe routes to school. And also part of that would be to also implement or try to implement again safety patrols. So to discuss this, I would move board approve working with the city of Lethbridge, police, the EMA, and various schools in our division to work on safe routes to school, and further the school board would support where possible schools having safety patrols at school. So that's the motion. I am aware, I think, I can't remember if it said this, but the city of Lethbridge is willing to help fund that program and to help us. And I think it's a valuable exercise. I think that it's valuable for our young kids to have leadership roles. And this would be another example of a leadership role. I have been at schools that have had a safety patrol, and it's quite effective, and people obey. And there's never been an incident at any of the schools that I've gone to or seen. And so I think it's a positive thing. I think also working on safe, now I mean it's changed now that the bus routes are only 1 kilometer and 2.4, but I think it also is important to work with the city to develop safe routes to school. So I'll leave, that's my comment.
Yeah, can I ask a question? You mentioned the city of Lethbridge is willing to fund that. Do we have a specific letter? Because I followed up when you referenced this letter, it references that Senator Buchanan would be a pilot. I talked to Senator Buchanan today, and they were part of a meeting back in 2020 to talk about the revitalization of the Buchanan area, where this was discussed. But then there was never any further follow-up from the city. And so, because there was also plans for the city to do a number of safety measures about parking and putting in the walk lights and stuff. And then it was just dropped. And so I'm just wondering, do we have a letter saying the city was willing to fund it? Because I know I'm not sure who was a part of this, because it wasn't, I was not a part of it. Maybe somebody else was a part of this study. But this was all new to me. I've never seen it before.
So I can provide some clarification in regards to funds. So is that the city has staff that's able to work together with schools to look at the safe routes to school. So the city worked together with Senator Buchanan's school and brought together community safety partners to look at the school zone area, and then COVID hit. And there hasn't been anything since that time. When the city had community conversations, which I know a number of trustees have talked about going to that NMAX back in February. I spoke to them in regards to this. They said that they were currently hiring somebody to fill that role that would be able to continue doing those safe routes to school planning. I don't believe that it's additional funds or the matter that there would be funds. It's more of somebody that would be able to coordinate and help support safe routes to school. And safe routes to school in the report you can see is a number of things. I know Craig mentioned school safety patrol, but it's actually a number of things. So there's just a number of other things. So we can just be looking at signage in a school zone. So school safety patrol is not the answer to every school zone. It's looking at what is the best option and working together with the school and with the community partners to come up with what the best option is.
So is there a plan for the city is the city reaching out to us on this? Like since they've created this, and I guess this isn't usually something under transportation, so I'm just not sure, where would we handle that, I guess?
Well, that's my question, is, are we thinking that like the school division would take the lead on this? Or are we thinking that we would be receptive to City of Lethbridge taking the lead? It's not like we have an extra person to take the lead on this, or certainly, assigning this to one of the existing associates or directors, is adding an additional assignment to them for what could be a fairly extensive amount of work. Now, I think that we would all say that safety is a priority, absolutely, and that we need to take a look at safety. I'm just wondering I think what we need is clarity as to who's responsible. Like if that's a city document, and that they're potentially hiring a city person, perhaps it's that we're receptive to having a representative sit at the table, or receptive to making sure that we distribute and share and engage schools, should they so wish to be engaged in that conversation with the city. I'm just wondering I'm always a little cautious about whose responsibility, because this could be a huge responsibility, and we don't have another person added to assume this responsibility.
So I have Christine, Tyler, and then Maureen.
One recommendation for a conversation could be at our joint city, just to clarify this document. We could do that. I think that would be an appropriate place to hold a conversation with the city. I think to have a motion to support safety patrols of schools, I'm not there. That's an operational piece that I think would be site-based. And I think we would need to have more conversation and research done on the safety around the schools. I know I can wait outside one of my child's schools, parked and waiting, and I can count several parents driving, looking on their phone through a school zone. There was kids jaywalking through the buses. There are parents parking in the middle of the street, and there are kids just jaywalking across because their parents' vehicle is a safe zone. It's an assumed safe zone, right? And so for me, when I look at that piece, and that's just one school, it's more than school patrols. It's more than that, right? It's a bigger picture, and I think that's a conversation that we need to continue to have. And I know I've spoken to a few administrators who this is an ongoing, repetitive conversation about safety around their schools. And so we need parent buy-in and participation in that as well. And so I would not be supportive of putting forward a motion about school patrols at this time, but I would suggest going to the joint city and having this conversation.
And just further to that, in regards to the parent piece of what you're seeing at the school. So, Kristen, you have the park and walk picture from Fleetwood. So, park and walk, like there's lots of different options of doing safe routes to school. Is looking at and doing pre-studies to see what's happening and what the issues are, and it's looking at each individual school because every school in the city is going to be different, right? So, Craig, I think it sent you
I sent a couple of newspaper articles.
So you have Tyler, Morag, and then Jenny. So Tyler.
Well, I think this is a good thing. Again, I'm not sure I'm at a motion, but I like the idea of us looking at pursuing it. I was going to say the same thing as Christine. I think this is something good for us to take to the city school boards and say, hey, this is something we've been talking about and wondering what we could do. And our understanding is we had something going on pre-COVID. Where's that at? What are we doing with it? What possible next steps are there? I think that is a good thing to do. In regard to the crossing guards or safety patrols, or whatever we're going to call them, that I think there's another issue with that. Those always require supervision. So we can't just let kids go out and patrol kids. So that means now we're talking about that's going to be assignable time for teachers or somebody there in another level of supervision. So we just got to keep that in mind. Not to say that it shouldn't be done or can't be done or can't fit into a schedule. But if the school wants it or whatnot, but we just have to make sure we're aware of that as well, is that will be something else that if we got something going like that, you're going to be putting assignable time into a calendar.
And just one quick thing to keep in mind right now, we have one YEO that we share between Holy Spirit and Lethbridge School Division, and the police are involved. It would be really good to take that to joint to find out, would they be willing to provide additional policing support for that, because I think that's a critical piece, looking at some of the issues I've had to work through with parents who infracted traffic regulations. Yeah.
There was another one on the park and walk at Fleetwood. Kristen, there was a different picture there. This one's on school. Yeah, I thought it was up there.
We already have the park.
That one, there you go. Okay. And Tyler, just in regards to your question of the assignable time piece, grade 5 to 6 students do not require on-site supervision.
What do you do? The stabbing trend is not.
The stabbing picture trend is not. No, that's not her. So this was at Fleetwood Bottom School, where it was not a school control program, but it was looking at what trends, and it was working together with other health services. So looking at when Christina had brought up earlier in regards to that wellness piece and encouraging students to walk, it was working with the community and looking for ways for parents to park further away from the school and to walk together with their students in the morning, and really look at that wellness piece of when we start our kids off in the morning with walking and talking and having those conversations, it starts our students off with having better days. So Safe Routes to School isn't just about school control, it's about these other options and looking at, and with the Park and Walk program, it's there's the pre-tests and the post-tests, there's posters, there's resources all provided to the schools.
Would you be open to a friendly amendment if we were to say the board explore the option of working with the city of Lethbridge, the police, CMA, and various schools in our division, like looking into this more and exploring the idea more, finding more information, and for the safety patrol part, if the board were to explore the supporting the options, so the schools have the option. I don't like making it feel like we are interfering at administration level, but if the board is willing to go out and put together some resources, gather some resources and some information, and say, hey, if you want to do this can be done, and still leave it their option. But if we adjusted this to finding out more information, exploring these options, then I think that we gather more of this information that people are not feeling totally informed on.
Great.
I have no problem with saying improve working, or explore working further with this agency. I thought that the last sentence wasn't saying that they all had to happen. I'm just saying that the board would support a school if they decided to have it. Now, if you want to change the wording, that's fine. Because as a parent who had young children, I appreciated the fact that there was safety patrol out there, because it did make the schools around the schools safer. As a teacher, where we have safety patrol in our schools, I also appreciate the fact that, number one, people obeyed the rules. Number two, we knew the kids could cross the road safely, and we got rid of going in between buses, going in between buses, jaywalking, and all sorts of things. And parents knew that they couldn't park in certain areas. So I don't care how you reword it. I'd be willing to support any friendly amendment, but just that it's something that we should look at to improve safety in our schools for our students, and also for parents and staff. And so if you wanted to make a friendly amendment to those two, I'm willing to hear it.
Cheryl and Richard.
mean, just a question, you know, as I looked through the, say, schools document, safety patrols are one strategy. And curious, before we actually look at what's the difference between 2013 and 2023 with respect to adult driving habits, with respect to people actually paying attention to where they're out on a road, with respect to actually respecting or listening to grade 4 and 5 students, until that's explored, or until we know if there's someone in the city who will oversee and manage and train, rather than schools assuming them, and maybe there's other, because there's a whole bunch of amazing strategies actually in that, are, and the school patrol is only one. Just curious why school patrols are so, because when we don't even know school patrols are actually still timely and safe in 2023 around the context of our schools without further study, I guess would be the question. Whereas would it be just working further, and maybe school patrols are an outcome of working further with the city? I don't know.
Well, I agree that there's a lot of great stuff in there. I know of school divisions that are still having school patrol, and they're still willing to support it, and they have no problems in having students out there stopping vehicles at the right time and being allowed that. So I think it's not so much that we would have to worry too much about their safety. They're trained, there's training involved, there's also backup. I'm just saying that we should, if at all possible, support that. Now, if we can say, let's study it a little further, that's fine with me, but we would have to study it with the AMA, which has a program for that, and to get the impact of different school divisions. I know that, if my memory serves me correctly, that Livingston Range still does it, Western still does it, Medicine Hat does it, Brooks does it. So those are a number of schools that have lots of different people, and Medicine Hat would be comparable to Lethbridge, although a little smaller, but they still have people that drive. And so I'm just saying that there's a possibility of improving our safety. And I'm willing, if Jenny wants to make a friendly amendment, I'm willing to that. And I agree, there's more, safety patrol is just one aspect, but if we just sit there and say, we'll study the problem, we'll look at it, we might not be ready to have maybe safety patrols in the fall. But I just made it sure that as long as we're aware of that we could do it, and there's stats out there, and there's school boards that are doing it, that we should look at it and maybe look at it in the fall. But I'm willing for a friendly amendment. And I just think it's important to improve the safety of students in our schools.
I was going to suggest an amendment right away.
Sure. I think this actually kind of goes to the active transportation question I had, where these are sort of like philosophically, obviously, I very much agree with this. I definitely also love safe schools. And I think it actually ties really closely into active transportation, because there's lots included in there around like building safe school drop-off zones that also encourage walking. I just feel like, personally, I don't know that this is a board, like the way that it's presented, I don't know that it's a board sort of scope piece, where I think that we could, the two pieces that I see for the board are to bring it forward to the city meeting, and I would actually say that we could take, I would encourage all of us, regardless of where this decision goes, is to bring it up at our school council meetings, because the transportation comes up a lot at my school council meetings, and if they want to like connect, like if parents want to be involved in supporting sort of like their own safety of them telling other parents to stop driving, or something like that. I just feel like often we'll say like, let's study it, or like, let's have a discussion, but truly like we don't do that work. Like this is us asking other people to do work that I don't know necessarily is like of the highest priority. How to tactic. Safety is always the highest priority. I don't know that this tactic necessarily is the highest priority from what I've understood from our team.
I would suggest if you bring it up in school council meeting that it's about safe routes to school, not making any suggestions of what that would be, that there is options available for safe routes to school. So Andrea and then Craig.
On the west side, I have noticed when I drive through a school zone at end of day, that principals are out there having crosswalks.
So you're gonna have to tell Keith to stop.
He probably likes that, and he's not the only one who's out there. I don't know if it's happening in all elementary schools, but, I'm just thinking that if they see the need for that, then they must know traffic flow in their area really well. So I would love to see it site-based, and, I do acknowledge that children who have been on school patrol, that's character building for them as well. So perhaps take it back to the Georgia community.
So, I guess I'm getting a little worried that we're talking about, we're gonna force schools to have school control, which is just one area of the safe routes to school. I would extremely be uncomfortable if I went into a school council and said, we should have a school patrol, because now I'm speaking as if I'm on the board wants it. The only reason that I put this in is that if the board said we would support, and that's all based on site-based management, site-based creation of safety patrols, then each one of us trustees could go to a school council and say, the board supports you if you want to do that. Doesn't mean that we're going to give them money. We're going to support the idea that there's a school patrol. So I think, number one, that was a mistake, that we're saying that we're going to dictate. No, we're not. We're just saying we would support that. And that's still giving our schools site-based management. The other part is that, yes, there's a conversation, and I agree with Christine Light, that should take place at the joint meeting, and that Holy Spirit's there too. And so they would be involved in this. And then we could look at what could come back from it, because it did happen during COVID. I'm just saying that it's important to protect our kids. And this is not telling schools that they have to have it. And as again, I would be uncomfortable if I was at the school board and said, or school council, yeah, we should have it, because now I'm speaking for the board. So the only thing I want is the board says we support school patrols where schools would like to have them. And then that gives the schools the ability to say, and parents say, okay, we hear you, maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. That's up to them.
I guess my question is, do we need to have a motion? If we're taking this piece to the joint city, if walking schools is already a conversation in the wellness committee, if that those conversation pieces are going, do we need to regroup with this idea at a future time? That's one question. Another question, this is operational, so it's not a governance piece, but could a school choose to do school patrol at this point? So they're not inhibited from doing it at this point. So they already do have board support to do school patrol. So if that's a reality, then this motion would be moot, right? If they already have that ability as a site to say, hey, let's do school patrol, then I don't think we need this motion. I think I would like to see our board encourage and promote, like, let's look at the safety around the schools. Let's continue with collaborative relationships with the Lethbridge Police Service, continue with collaborative relationships with the city of Lethbridge, and see how we can enhance and grow capacity. Jenny?
I appreciate that notion. I think that sometimes these things, there's nothing inhibiting it. It is here, but there's also a place for taking intentional focus onto something. And so I think Craig is bringing this up because it is something we've all heard about and we've all seen, and there's a purpose behind this motion. And I think that if we are careful in the way that we approach it, it can be very appropriate. And so I think it's important for us to have these conversations, and it adds intention to this topic, right? And so I do think that there is a place for a motion that the board would take that effort, make that effort, and take that initiative to explore working with the city to find out, hey, who are you hiring? What's going on here? What are they doing? If you're talking about safe schools and we're talking about safe schools, we should talk together. And that we take that initiative. If they aren't addressing us, then let's call them and let's ask them, what are you guys thinking? And so I think it's worth having a motion that the board explore working with the city of Lethbridge Police, the AMA, and various schools in our division to work on safe routes to school. As far as the safety patrol piece goes, I recognize that is specifically important to you. If we wanted to implement that, I think that it would be very important for us to have the wording should schools choose to implement a safety patrol program. I would be interested to find out first why we don't, and to gain further understanding. This is a program that once existed at some of our schools and doesn't now, and so to gain understanding before we get that specific, because I think there's a lot of strategies. Safety patrol is one of them, and I think that this piece of gaining information, exploring these avenues, will give us a better conversation to pick out and identify what strategies we want to focus on most.
Great.
I'd accept the first part as a friendly motion. The question I have, maybe it should be answered. We used to have them. Most of our schools used to have them. And yet, if it's individual, why is none of the schools doing that? So, was that something that came from central, from administration, or was it something the principals decided not to do? Because if what Christine says is right, that they have the right to, they can do it at any time. Why did it stop?
Sure. Just I can give a little history on that because it was a hot topic when I first started here as superintendent. And so that was just about 10 years ago. And it was a conversation that was happening, and there's only 2 schools, elementary schools left in the school division that have safety patrols. And and I don't know the veracity of any of this, but I know the conversation was such that principals were feeling like they were putting kids in jeopardy. And that as well, teachers were beginning to withdraw from wanting to volunteer to oversee the program. And so I think that there was a number of factors, Craig. So I think, some were, and I don't know the veracity of the history before me, but I know they sort of came to an end. They're the last 2 ended my first year here. The site-based decision, a number of them had ceased having patrols. For my time, the conversation was a combination of student safety. We'd rather be out there ourselves as administrators because drivers aren't listening to kids as much. True or not, I don't know. And that they wanted to use other strategies, and that some of the teachers who had volunteered to do it for years were no longer willing to volunteer to sort of oversee the patrol, and that it was actually quite extraneous amount of time. And so those were the reasons that were given, and so there was only 2 left when I arrived. There was a time, safety, supervision would be my response to the history of that.
And I can add to that in that when we look at the safe routes to school, it's that school safety patrol is not always the answer. So when we look at Mike Mountain School, it was teaching students how to use the crosswalk buttons that were in place. And yes, patrollers can use them, but the safest option at that point was that teach kids how to use the lights that were there. When we look at Dr. Proby's school, it was back when Safety City was in existence. So Safety City, together with AMA, did pedestrian safety training with every single class in the school in their gym. So there are other options other than AMA School Safety Patrol, and that's not always the answer. Sometimes it's looking at what is the best option, and it's looking at those safe routes to school piece. So I have one more comment from Christina, and then we will close this down and look for what your next direction with what the motion you have. Christina.
First of all, yes, second of all, yeah, I was just going to call the motion.
Yep, call the question. Yep. So we're calling the question.
Mine was I wanted to make an amendment.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the floor.
I was going to see if Craig is open to a friendly amendment for the motion that the board explore working with the city of Lethbridge Police Service, AMA, and various school divisions to work on safe routes to school, period. And then exempt, and then get rid of the school board, we'll have the school safety patrols at schools, just because obviously here it's already taken a ton of time. It looks like we're kind of promoting it in the way that this is worded. So being that it is a part of safe routes to school, I think it's covered in there, and then we just explore that as part of safe routes to school.
Right.
I would accept that as a friendly motion, and just the feeling that if it comes up at school council, can we say that this is one area that could be looked at? I mean, without getting in trouble with the board.
I think it's exploring that. I would share that there's other options.
Yeah,
right?
I would do that too.
Yep, safe routes to school can include, you know, when you list a few different things. Yeah.
So I would support Tyler.
Friendly.
Okay,
so.
100% did, that was exactly my motion.
Okay, so the friendly amendment is that the second sentence?
It's exactly what I read.
Perfect. So Tyler has made a friendly amendment to remove the second sentence with AMA being mentioned in the first sentence. I do need to abstain from the vote. So I will now call the question on the first sentence that is on the board. So those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And please mark that I abstain. Thank you. And next we have ATA ratifying the memorandum.
Yes. I move. You're good. I move that the board ratify the March 24th, 2023 memorandum of agreement between ATA Local 41 and the Lethbridge School Division.
Thank you, Craig. And Andrea, you're planning to abstain? Okay, thank you. And those in favor? And Andrea abstains, and that's carried. Thank you. Next, we have our division highlights. So, we're going to the first, Craig.
I got a lot, so I'm going to go fast.
Let's keep them fairly, we're at 6:30, and I know you're losing at least one trustee at 7.
So, today's Western School Council, March 1st, board retreat, community conversations, and Calvert School Council Policy Committee. Attended Spirit of 51 night, attended the ATA induction banquet, attended basketball zone playoffs, and I'd just like to mention LCI JV girls won the league championship. LCI senior varsity came in 3rd in zones and then top 8 in provincials. Lakeview School Tour was at Calvert School on March 16th during school-led interviews. Read to a grade 3 class at Calvert during their March Madness competition. Attended Blackfoot flag raising and attended provincial wrestling at LCI, where the students representing our division won 2 gold, 5 silver, and 1 bronze. And I can give this later so we can mention all the students. And have started a course on the U of A course on Indigenous Canada, and I'm partly through the first lesson.
Thank you. And let's just keep it to our highlights, or not our attendance at everything. So who would like to go next? Christina.
I just wanted to offer a really sincere appreciation to the Indigenous education team for hosting the event for the Blackfoot flag raising. It's really meaningful, and congratulations to Cheryl. It's a great honor to be recognized with the name. I mean, people who were at the blanket exercise with me last year, remember, I was just like in tears the whole time about this. Yeah, very sincere congratulations, and thanks very much to organizing that, and to all those who are participating.
Thank you. Andrea?
The Spirit of 51 event for support staff is wonderful, and I thank the HR team for all the work they did around that, and everyone for coming. So nice to have them there in person, to honor them for everything that they do. I was just honored to be at the flag raising. It was so touching and important and beautiful, and warm congratulations to Cheryl Russell for her beautiful Blackfoot name. I attended a beautiful spring morning concert and the annual Christmas Elementary School. got to Lethbridge Christian and Lakeview School Council, so that was great. We loved the Lakeview School tour. And this Thursday, LCI versus Chinook, they have a fundraising basketball game that could be of interest to everyone. So, thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Tyler.
Just want to check, I think it came up before, but nobody got the Gator stuff. I really wanted to hear about that. I really wanted to go, unfortunately I couldn't make it because I thought that was going to be good. I did, well, Jenny and I both actually, I'll get her highlights and she's gone. We went to the Patterson Choir and Handbells, which was good, but I'm more of a rocker, so I really wanted to get some Gator stuff. But anyways, that was good and a big turnout. The church was pretty full and lots of people there, so good to see stuff like that. And then I did all those things Craig did.
Well, March was a great month. I echo Andrea and Christina's words about the Black Book flag raising. It was just a beautiful afternoon. I was able to judge at the Cole Agnes Davidson Science and Heritage Fair. They have some phenomenal students with great projects, and I was able to give a couple of awards there, so always a fun afternoon. And I was also able to attend the teacher induction banquet and just celebrate some really phenomenal first-year teachers. Christina, you're good? Okay. Jenny, did you have your comments?
I'm not sitting there, so.
I can go with mine and then wait for you to come back. So for me, of course, I've already highlighted the Indigenous education team and the Black Book flag raising. That's a wonderful ceremony. And just one thing that I haven't heard my colleagues mention is the Francophone flag raising. As cold and chilly, and I don't know how we forgot that, but it was a wonderful time to be able to be out there, to see all of our French immersion students out there, and just to be able to, as a board, show them that we support the French immersion program within our division. March is definitely a busy month when you look at our calendar of events and that we touch on so many things with try and trade and our teacher pieces and our ICE scholarship stuff. So it was a wonderful month for us to be out there with our students and the fine arts program stuff as well. So, and then our sports championships. Jenny?
I will highlight how amazing our families and communities that support our schools are, and our families take all sorts of different forms and structures, that they all come together to support the kids in our schools. And I saw that this morning. I was over at Nicholas Chair and had a dance-a-thon this morning, and they were raising money for their school, and they met their goal. They were hoping to raise $5,000, and it's amazing to see families and community members come together and provide that to schools and help them reach their goals. And to go into the gym this morning and see the prizes that people in the community and people in their school community have donated to these kids, and to see the time and the effort the parents were putting into putting up the streamers and the balloons and just creating something that is fun and creates that school loyalty and atmosphere and that community atmosphere. I just really appreciated seeing and being a part of.
Excellent. And make sure on it's Friday. Bacon bingo.
Oh yeah.
Make sure bacon bingo. You're at Gilbert Patterson. They do have a silent auction on right now, so do that online. But be there or be square. Friday night, something to do. Christina.
One little highlight. Sorry, I was going to let Jenny do it, but I just want to appreciate the ICE scholarship. It's a very special place for Christine. You can like see the light in Christine's eyes when she works on the ICE scholarship. I love it. It is truly just like an incredible experience to see all of the incredible innovation of the children of all the different ages. And we had the elementary there this year featuring, and they were like their little tiny robots, and they were learning from the Chinook robotic crew and the Churchill kids. It was great. And so just thank you so much to Christine and to Garrett and Kristen and Avis and Cheryl, everyone who helped sort that out. And it was a great event. I just thought the event itself was innovative. I loved the breakfast, but this was really fun.
Wonderful highlights. Oh, Cheryl has another.
So I just want to add, so I don't know if you've noticed that the crew, Cobanks Elementary kids who did the news coverage, the video's now up on the website. If you want to watch their, you want to watch their newscast, perfect.
We'll check it out. Craig.
Real quick, at the university last week, I ran into Lethbridge HS / IJAL. High school students that have won a gold medal in Paris, and I'd like to see if the board could invite them next April, or the April meeting. Because it was unbelievable. We have students from every school and diverse thing, and they won on board.
Excellent. Thank you. And we go into April to celebrate more amazing things in our division. So next is community conversations. So with April being a very busy month with, we have our lengthy Easter break, spring break. There hasn't been able to book a date or a place yet, but as soon as I have that confirmed, then I will, by the end of this week, so make that go on our Facebook page and our website. Jenny?
Just with regards to community conversations, I had feedback from a parent that because it's listed under 2022 in the community engagement website, they assumed it wasn't current information. So like it says date and location for March, they thought that was for last year. And so I think we just need to make sure that that is clear, I guess.
And then next is the welcome back event. I'll turn this over to Cheryl.
It really, because planning starts well in advance for the welcome back event, especially if, depending upon what the board desires to see. And so really it's the, too many documents here. I did bring the school calendar for next year to tell you the exact date. It's the Friday. Where all staff, including support staff, would be back. That would be the morning you would host your event. Right? Oh, September 1st, that's right. It is September 1st. Yeah, Friday, that's right. Now I remember that. Friday, September 1st. And so really, the board has 3 different options you can look at. The breakfast that you had last year, I know it was a huge hit, quite frankly, and staff were thrilled. That it was informal, that they could stop by, that it was fun, there's music, there's tables, there was, or you can get the more, prior to that, there's the formalized, you can have a speaker, and we were getting quite big to stuff everyone into a gym, quite frankly, so we'd have to rethink what that looks like, if that's what you want. Or during COVID, and I don't want to do that again, was the video welcome that you sent out to staff. So looking for feedback so we can make sure that we're securing any speakers, facilities, all that kind of logistics well in advance.
Christine? I loved the pancake breakfast. I thought it was great. I loved serving the staff. We could all connect with them, and it was fortunately a beautiful morning. And I think staff just love the ability to connect, right? I don't think that was for a keynote speaker per se, so I would support that. Andrea?
I would definitely support that again. We had really good feedback, and it was fun, and you can learn to make really good pancakes.
Just hang out with Christina Larkin.
Yeah.
Or you would make them, Tyler. I learned a lot from Christina. The only thing I would say is if we do that again, logistically, we need to get the food going before we let the people in, because we need to have like trays of pancakes and sausage and everything, because we kind of let them in and they were standing around waiting in line, so we need to be a little better about that. We need to find more Christinas to do pancakes, because the Mike and Tyler show was a little iffy. But we'd be better this year.
You bet. We need a list of the improvables, right? And then, of course, the timing was one of the big improvables, right? And setup. And all, like the setup was sort of, a panic. Yeah, I thought the facilities were going to set up tables, then we were going to set up tables, and then we had. So setup and timeliness, for sure.
My only other question to that is, now we're talking September 1, Lethbridge could be a million-mile-an-hour wind, could be raining, could be snowing. What is our contingency on that?
Was the reason it was hosted at Chinook is you've got the cafeteria and gymnasium, like as a just in case. So you've got a fairly protected area where your people can still cook, right? And you could have like outside the cafeteria area there, and then you could have runners that would bring that food into the cafeteria area, and then you could set up, because that's real close to the gym. You could have some tables set up in the gym and there's tables already set up. That was the backup plan if there's special ed.
Okay. So that's a go ahead. Oh, okay, we're ready. Perfect. So now we need to go back into camera. And those in favor? That's carried. So once we are off, we're off. Okay, so let's take a look at our list for in camera. We did a lot today. Thank you.
And that's it, Allison. We're not coming back in, so I can stop the stream.
We will potentially go back in, but we'll just
Not to do it.
No, we don't need to.
You're good.
Okay, just want to know if I stop the stream. Okay.